place of coaches this season who would be coming out of this shutdown for 3 months and trying to figure out how they're going to, let's say among the contenders.
Search the Wojbot on TuneIn to listen.
Ready for a fan-driven take on this season's MLB action? On the Beat the Shift podcast, superfans Alex Uy, Alex Rudy, Barbode Markazi, and Ray Estrada break down all the latest MLB news and drama while supplying you with top-notch fantasy baseball advice.
But I kind of want to start with maybe the least talked about one here is Adam Duvall, who just out of nowhere had a monster shortened season this past year.
Search Beat the Shift on TuneIn to listen.
Want someone to talk to about your latest audio adventures? So do we. Share what you're listening to on TuneIn by tagging us in Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram posts. Then make sure to follow TuneIn on your platform of choice so we can share all your favorite news stations, events, podcasts with you. Get social, discover new things, and spread the love of listening with TuneIn.
Follow us. Hashtag Get Social. Get Social.
To resolve problems arising from competing supply agreements.
It's TuneIn Sports on this day. On this day in 2012, American snowboarder Shaun White achieves the first ever Super Pipe perfect score in Winter X Games history.
Wow. That is why this dude is Shaun White. In the victory lap, he said, I'm going to put a period on it.
Just in the conversations, breaking down the moments just like this.
Search sports to be part of the discussion on TuneIn.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. U.S. stock index futures are slumping alongside stocks in Europe amid lingering concerns about volatile retail trader speculation. S&P futures recovered from their worst of their losses after Johnson & Johnson said its one-shot vaccine generated strong protection against COVID-19, though it was less effective against the South African variant, and Johnson & Johnson shares are lower, down 3.5%. S&P futures, though, down about 16 points now. Dow futures down 187, NASDAQ futures down 57, the DAX in Germany is down 1%. 10-year Treasury down 15.30 seconds, yield 1.09%, yield on the 2-year 0.11%. NYMEX crude oil up 1.4%, up 76 cents at 53.11 a barrel. COMEX gold is up about 2%, up $36.60 at 1877.80 an ounce. The euro 1.2153 against the dollar, British pound 1.3745, and the yen 104.71. GameStop paring its pre-market gain after earlier surging triple digits is now up about 97% in early trading. AMC up 64%, and Citron Research says after 20 years of publishing, it will no longer publish short reports. That according to a tweet. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom and Paul.
Karen, thanks so much. I'll lift your 384 on GameStop off that 340 level. It is well behaved, is how I would editorialize in the technical space. Paul and I, we've had so many good guest folks on GameStop, really a varied, eclectic group. We said we need to hear from a French major from Vassar. If we do that, if we get a French major from Vassar, we've checked all the boxes. Andy Massa leading our coverage on GameStop. Andy, when you were at Vassar going, où est la bibliothèque, did you ever think you'd be leading coverage on a short squeeze?
Mais non. Here I am.
I think this is...
and it's been a wild ride.
It has been a wild ride. And folks, I speak for Chairman Peter Brower. We take pride in Bloomberg of eclectic hires and give them the challenge of finance. And Andy Massa is a trophy taker in this historic week. Annie, I want to move forward from your lead report, which went worldwide. Andrew Ross Sorkin quoting it in his deal book this morning. What happens to Robinhood on the next tranche of DTCC need or bank assistance? What happens next?
Well, what we saw yesterday is really that Robinhood had to scramble to raise this $1 billion in cash from its existing investors to cope with the demands of this just extremely volatile market and the demands that are being placed on them by their central clearinghouse. we already saw that there was a cash infusion back last year. They raised a couple of funding rounds, also in the wake of some turbulence at the company. And it's a real test of a trading platform that has really created this trading as entertainment phenomenon. But now they've been pushed in a really serious way.
Annie, there's been a lot of pushback on social media yesterday about Robinhood and some of these other platforms restricting trading, calling to question maybe even some nefarious relationships between Ken Griffin, Citadel, Steve Cohen, Point 72. Do we know of any financial or ownership relationships between those parties and Robinhood?
That's exactly right. It was almost kind of surreal to watch as it unfolded yesterday. You saw AOC and then Ted Cruz, the unlikeliest of bedfellows, both kind of ragging on Robinhood for putting the brakes on trading in certain names like GameStop and AMC. And they were saying people have the right to trade. What are you doing, Robinhood? And that was in addition to just angry customers as well. So it was really wild to see that. Now, Robinhood came out with a statement last night saying we were not pushed by market makers to put those trading curbs in place. This was a risk management decision, but it hasn't been enough really to assuage those concerns from politicians as well as everyday users.
And it's so important. What happens on a Friday? I mean, I just did a fancy average price study of yesterday versus today. On a blended basis, right now, GameStop is up some 11, 18%, whatever, over where it was blended yesterday. It's Friday, Annie. Does Friday matter? I mean, it's like to get to the weekend.
Fresh money buy list. They announced
well, I mean, as we've learned this week and in the past several days, trading is just sentiment, right? So there are those studies that show that trading is more ebullient on a Friday than a Monday.
But do the investors that own Robinhood now, or is Paul mentions the players adjacent to Robinhood like Citadel and others, do they say it's Friday, we got to fix this for Monday? Is that in your reporting?
I mean, that will be something we're going to have to look into today. It's a really good question, but you've already seen that some of the excitement has spilled over into other names as well. So now this has gone well beyond GameStop. Elon Musk tweets about, exactly, or Elon Musk tweets about crypto, and all of a sudden, Robinhood is having issues with its crypto platform. So clearly, there's a contagion, and it's not just GameStop, it's not just AMC. The ripple effects are being felt in other securities and other asset classes.
And Tom, I know you're dying to know, but Bitcoin, that's up about 14% here today. So we're 38,000 called on Bitcoin. I know you want to think about that entry point for you. Annie, the $1 billion that Robinhood raised, that enough? Do we know is that going to be enough to kind of keep them where they need to be from a financial balance sheet perspective?
Well, I think that will really depend on how trading goes in the next couple of weeks. If we continue to see these hyper volatile days and see their customers go long some of these meme type like Reddit fueled stocks, it's going to be something to watch for sure.
What's the next thing that you're looking at in this story here, Annie? I mean, what's the is it just how these names are going to trade? What other names are going to get caught up in it?
Yeah, I think that's definitely something to keep an eye on. I mean, now Robinhood is kind of playing a bit of whack-a-mole as far as the next name, the next phenomenon. And we've already seen that famous short seller Citron Research said they're going to stop offering their short selling research. So it's an indication that this is much bigger than any one, video game retailer. It's really had seismic effects in the rest of the market as well.
Annie Master, we look for your wrap-up here on Friday, and of course the leadership of our publishing through the weekend as well on what is clearly a short squeeze, and as Massa says, folks, an element of contagion as well. Paul, futures much better, negative 45 earlier, really quite an improvement to the tape, and the VIX comes in 34 into 31.83.
Yeah, you wonder if today's pre-market action reflecting some of those trading phenomena that we saw earlier in the week, Tom, where, hedge funds, in order to cover some of those shorts, were looking for some cash in some of the other, more blue chip names. And we saw that when that sell-off earlier in the week. And you wonder if you're seeing some of that trading come back here on this Friday futures market.
Yeah, we will see. I also want to note stronger renminbi, whether that's off of the delicacies of Asia in this crisis or maybe just the liquidity issues of the Chinese banking system. Stronger yuan today, that's of note as well. The 10-year yield, 1.10%, 6 basis point move. With more on Robinhood, this is Bloomberg Radio. Good morning.
Not sure what to listen to next? Well, here's this week's top 3 things to listen on TuneIn. Get ready for a fresh perspective on the sports world with First Take, Her Take, the new female-led spin-off of ESPN's First Take. Now that Joe Biden has been sworn in as America's 46th president, catch up on his first days in office with live, on-demand coverage from your favorite news source. Hear the latest and greatest hits coming out of Nashville with TuneIn's top station for country music, Country Roads. Find these and more trending audio on the homepage of the TuneIn app.
Did you know that with TuneIn's local radio feature, you can stream live FM and AM stations broadcasting in your area?
This is WeBe 108.
Hear your favorite frequencies and hosts in smooth streaming quality.
104.1 KRBE.
And discover local news, talk, and music stations you didn't even know existed.
In-depth discussions.
Navigate to the local radio section under Browse to listen locally on TuneIn.
This week on the New Yorker Radio Hour, I'll talk with staff writers Jane Mayer and Evan Osnos about the balance of power in Washington, the Democrats' razor-thin control of Congress, the Republican infighting over the insurrection, and the ambitious first 100 days plan of President Biden. That's the New Yorker Radio Hour from WNYC Studios. Listen to this episode on TuneIn today.
To wait until spring training to get back into baseball. Just turn on the Roto World Baseball podcast to stay current on the latest offseason stories, along with scouting reports and strategies for spring training your own fantasy baseball team.
We've seen statistically over the years, baseball is one of the most coin-flippy sports when it comes to the postseason. We talk about a team that's also got the second lowest batting average in the American League.
Search Roto World Baseball on TuneIn to listen.
Save!
Ever wonder what life is really like as a professional hockey player? On the Spittin' Chicklets podcast, NHL veterans Ryan Whitney and Paul Bissonnette join Barstool sports writer Rear Admiral to share stories from their playing days while bringing their outspoken brand of commentary to the day's top headlines.
Yeah, that cameo request turned into an SNL skit. So crazy. How about that?
Thinking of you studying, I just pictured 2 pit bulls barking at each other.
Search Spittin' Chicklets on TuneIn to listen.
Get social. Get social.
It's a new year. Why not try something new? Like following TuneIn on social media to stay in the know with all the amazing audio to come in 2021.
Follow us.
Facebook, Twitter, or even Instagram at TuneIn.
Let's just start with the Want to know what's happening in the football universe? Pass it over to the ESPN FC podcast to hear the worldwide leader in sports break down news, highlights, and analysis from the most popular sport in the world.
Going into this, we're just not going to scare anybody. Zinedine Zidane said it's like a final because if they lose this game, then they have 1 point from 3 matches.
Search ESPN FC on TuneIn to listen.
You're working from home, right? Why not make your background listening more enjoyable with TuneIn Premium?
TuneIn Premium is your key to unlocking commercial-free news coverage from CNN, Fox News Radio, MSNBC, and more.
Now, let's turn back to politics. Plus non-stop music channels for every mood and activity.
Not to mention less ads on over 100,000 radio stations from around the world.
Search Premium to hear it for yourself.
What a great movie that was.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130. Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1. To Boston. Bloomberg 106.1. To San Francisco. Bloomberg 960. To the country. Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Surveillance.
Good morning. I'm Karen Moscow, along with Tom Keene and Paul Sweeney. And the opening bell brought to you by SEI. Challenges highlight one's character, partnership, and resilience. At SEI, they act as one community with their clients. Go to SEIC.com/banks. The S&P 500 is lower at the open. It's down 0.6% or 22 points at 3764. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is down 0.6% or 192 points at 30,422. And the Nasdaq's down 0.33% or 47 points at 13,290. 10-year Treasury down 15.30 seconds, yield 1.09%. Yield on the 2-year 0.11%. NYMEX crude oil up 1.25% or 67 cents at $53.01 a barrel. COMEX gold up 1.6% or $29.80. It's at 18.70.90 an ounce. The euro 1.2150 against the dollar. The yen 104.78. And watching shares of GameStop, they're up 105%. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom and Paul.
Karen Moscow, thank you so much. We appreciate that. Let's step back from the GameStops of the world. Let's take a look, Tom, maybe at the broader markets here. There's still that push-pull between those that are willing to take the longer view, look to the other side of this pandemic and take a more risk-on profile, and those that continue to be concerned about the economic fallout of what we are seeing in the economy as the pandemic continues on a global scale. Eric Knudsen, Neuberger Berman, Chief Investment Officer, Multi-Asset Class, joins us. Eric, I kind of wonder, I'd love to step back and do the 30,000-foot view from the Neuberger Berman perspective. What's your view of risk right here in terms of financial markets?
I want to go back to Novavax.
Well, thanks for stepping back from the last year, GameStop and asking for a little higher.
Give us the next question.
Yeah, thank you. So the key fact pattern around 2021
2 minutes into the session, we retreat by 0.7% on the S&P 500, on the Nasdaq, by 0.5%. A little bit of news I want to get to just quickly.
Improving
the
earnings,
SEC says it's examining markets for potential
likely some modestly increased prices and falling
try and get a bit more specific in just a moment. A bipartisan effort brewing on Capitol Hill with Congress stepping in
you put all
to the feud between Wall Street and Main Street. Speaker Pelosi weighing in.
And frankly, we agree with that for a 12-month horizon for 2021. The problem with that, with everything I just said, is that that's very consensus. That's a very well understood fact pattern.
Incoming Senate Banking Chairman Sherrod Brown saying the need for change, writing in a statement, quote, people on Wall Street only care about the rules when they're the ones getting hurt. It's time for the SEC and Congress to make the economy work for everyone, not just for Wall Street.
And more relative value exposure.
Well, John, this has captured everyone's
and
attention
then looking
this week.
for
Our attention, Wall
volatility, which
Street's
we think
attention,
will
regulators'
see,
attention, and yes,
to add to some of those
bipartisanship on
exposures
Capitol
for
Hill
that longer
resulting
term
from
or
this. We have
more
all
medium-term
watched as
view.
GameStop has rallied more than
Eric, so, as we look towards the folks down in Washington in terms of fiscal stimulus, I mean, there's a $1.9 trillion ask out there for stimulus. It looks like the bid's going to be somewhere below that. How are you kind of factoring that into your 2021 outlook?
So we're expecting, say, 750 to 900 billion to come through, which is still pretty significant on top of over 3.1 trillion that's been pushed into the economy in the last 12 months plus, or less than 12 months.
Only
So
under
that
temporary
it
leadership right
continues
now
that
as
very
Congress
strong
is
fiscal
not
impulse.
yet approving Joe Biden's pick
we
for
think that that's
the
going,
agency
even
of
at
Gary
those
Gensler.
levels,
That hearing
that's going to
hasn't even been
contribute
scheduled yet. But speaking of Capitol Hill, as you alluded to, a number of bipartisan lawmakers calling attention to this issue. Who would have thought that AOC, the leader of the progressive movement in many ways, and Senator Tom Cruise, the Republican, would actually agree on something, or Ted Cruz, I should say, John, sorry, you were talking about movies earlier, now I'm getting in my head. But they actually agree on this. Elizabeth Warren talking about this, and Sherrod Brown of the Senate Finance Committee, and Maxine Waters, who heads up the equivalent committee in the House, promising hearings on this, though no date has yet been set. And in the meantime, John, the frenzy is continuing. GameStop, once again, the second most traded stock early in trading in terms of value. It was the third most yesterday, number one in days prior this week. The frenzy is just continuing. And you're
Eric, Paul's too young to remember this, but Eric, I know you lived it, and that is there was a growthiness of the 90s that was expressed perfectly by the wonderful Putnam Investments of Boston. And it was Voyager or whatever, but there was an effervescence that young Knudsen lived. And Eric, is the growthiness now so discreet in big tech that it's not like the 90s? Or do you sort of wake up in the morning and go, wait, this is Vujade?
Something other than Europe, right?
Yeah, it's funny.
For you right now,
remembering
yes.
I was talking about that with colleagues last night.
Thank you for that.
There are elements of what we just saw with the
capturing tons of attention, a lot of interest, Congress, et cetera.
late 99,
But I think ultimately, 3 months down the road, 6 months down the road, 9 months down the road,
to that time
this
period
is going to be seen as a tempest in a teapot,
often
a
don't
blip
remember that
in the market. I'm much more focused on the change we have in governance in the United States after 40 years
and so,
of Republican
yes, he was
efforts
identifying
to shrink government. Remember Ronald Reagan's famous phrase, the 9 most terrifying words of the English language. I'm from the government and I'm here to help. That reached its logical conclusion with the Trump administration in the deconstruction of the administrative state. And now we have Joe Biden, who has huge needs, COVID, economy, climate, etc., inequality, and huge opportunity.
And we go back to kind of a post-GFC environment where the only support is monetary policy. We're likely to go back into more of an extended secular stagnation environment
and good
where you're going to want to
to me that sets up
because they've got
activist government,
which leads to policy-driven market,
expect to see in 21 could be a shorter-term phenomenon
for investors.
Eric, I'm looking at your 2021 report. You've got some nice, easy-to-read charts and graphics that make it easy to get a sense of kind of where you guys are falling out here as you look to 2021. Talk to us about real and alternative assets. It's something we don't talk too much about as we think about kind of investing, but with an asset allocator like yourself, we can kind of go there. Give us a sense of kind of how you're thinking about real and alternative assets from an overweight, underweight perspective.
But over the last couple of months, I've been talking about COVID speed breaking out beyond health to climate
seek to capture the benefit of that reflationary growth, but also to hedge against
climate,
the potential for inflation shocks this year, or even if they're very short-term transitory. And that's on the classic kind of economically sensitive areas of commodities. We're also overweight gold and precious metals as a hedge against short-term volatility, but also as a hedge or mitigant against the risk of fiat currency devaluation.
The numbers are 1, 2, or 3%.
The Fed is going to be stimulated for longer. The ECB can't let the euro depreciate or appreciate versus the dollar,
in the near term.
And so on. And so, there's a couple of themes associated with that commodity exposure. More broadly, we want to be positioned around inflationary growth exposures, whether that's in equities or areas like commodities, tips and linkers. We think are good diversifiers when you get paid nothing and negative sovereign nominals, which are more traditional diversifiers. And then in real estate, I got to tell you, we can't come up with a broad
Let's get Bitcoin up on the screen
real estate-wide assessment, but we know there's a lot of
institution trade? What is it to
more
you
idiosyncratic opportunities, whether you're on the REIT side or the direct side.
Eric Knudsen, thank you so much. Greatly appreciate it with Newberger and Bourbon. Always great to talk, Paul, to Eric, about things. Look at the headline out. SEC says it's examining markets for potential wrongdoing. And because Eric was on, I was thinking of Boston. And I'm like, in 1980, I'm still not over 41 years ago when the Red Sox traded Fred Lynn to the Angels.
Right.
I mean, talk about wrongdoing.
Yes.
It's a serious headline.
Rice. Rice, that was an outfielder.
Yeah, it was like the real deal. SEC says it's examining markets for potential wrongdoing. Sort of broad.
Yeah. And I guess they have to say something because, the backlash on Twitter and social media, what's happened over the last 24 hours has really been extraordinary. A lot of folks are saying, wait a minute, you can't shut down these exchanges. You can't limit my ability to trade. This is just a big giveaway to the hedge funds, all that kind of populist discussion, but it's broad-based.
That headline, GameStop, 400 to 303, down 100 points off that one single leg. vehicles can use Bitcoin. That's still way above where it was lows of yesterday. It's a new low for today right now, 330 on GameStop. The Dow negative 349. With our news in New York City is Michael Barr.
Tom, Paul, thank you very much. Johnson & Johnson said today its coronavirus vaccine is safe and effective. Johnson & Johnson vaccine is 66% effective at preventing COVID-19 symptoms and 85% effective at preventing severe illness. There were no hospitalizations or deaths among trial participants. Today, CDC Director Rochelle Walensky told ABC's Good Morning America it's another tool in the country's arsenal.
I'm really hopeful that, we will have another tool. We will have another vaccine that we can produce in large quantities and get out to the people. I think the vaccine supply is one of the bottlenecks that we are having in mass vaccination.
The Johnson & Johnson vaccine is administered in a single dose, requires no special refrigeration, and could be authorized for emergency use next month. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says there are enemies within the House of Representatives. She did not give names, but audio of newly elected Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene says the Speaker has committed treason and embraced other conspiracy theories on mass shootings. Cicely Tyson, who earned an Oscar nomination for her role in the movie Sounder, has died. Tyson earned an honorary Oscar in 2018 and won 2 Emmys for playing a 110-year-old former slave in the 1974 television drama The Autobiography of Miss Jane Pittman. In 2016, she received the Presidential Medal of Freedom from then-President Barack Obama.
After high school, she found work as a secretary. Until one day she stood up and announced to everyone in the room, "I am sure that God did not put me on the face of this earth to bang on a typewriter for the rest of my life."
Now we're on climate, same thing. Now it's cyber.
Cicely was already displaying what you could call a flair for the dramatic.
Tyson also won a Tony Award in 2013. Cicely Tyson was 96. Live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studios, this is Global News 24 hours a day, on air and on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. Tom, Paul.
Michael Barr, thanks so much. Paul, we've been so busy. GameStop 325, it's sort of noodling around after that SEC headline. We barely talked about normal stuff. I was thunderstruck at the decline in traditional TV as reported by Sarah Fraser in Axios 5 or 6 days ago. Did that surprise you? Or is it sort of on Sweeney trend?
It's kind of on trend, Tom, and that's that's kind of the problem, obviously, for these traditional media companies that depend upon broadcast and cable TV. We're just seeing this migration. I'm sure you're seeing it in your household, Tom, to streaming services, and every media company is really making the pivot from the traditional broadcast and cable television model for programming, distributing programming, to now the streaming model. It's a subscription model. Presumably, as the penetration grows, there'll be a more predictable revenue stream. But that pivot from your traditional revenue streams to potentially new streaming revenue streams, that's a painful time for a lot of these big media companies. But the ones that are perceived to be in good shape, like a Walt Disney company, stockholders are giving them the benefit of the doubt that they're going to be able to make that pivot. And so we're seeing just huge investments in their streaming businesses. And that's kind of where the world's going, Tom. And I guess, the pandemic, I think in hindsight, will have proven to be an accelerant there.
Down negative 370. That's enough normal conversation. Let's get back to what matters. GameStop, 400 down to 300. And it's rebounded and it is fragile. I'll call it 328, way off the 193 close yesterday, but certainly GameStop from the 450, 460 level early this morning. A little bit south, trading, and of course beyond active. Again, the yield gets my attention. The 10-year yield 1.09%. A higher yield. Stay with us. This is Bloomberg Radio.
Have you heard the most unscripted, unfiltered, and unhinged sports show in the game? On the Skip and Shannon Undisputed podcast, Skip Bayless, Shannon Sharp, and Jenny Taft discuss the biggest stories in the world of sports.
Father Time is at least sort of looking over one shoulder right now. LeBron, you remember me?
The one thing, even Skip, because, they cut some games last year. That was 10, 12 games that he averaged in 25. That's another 250, 275
Search
points.
Skip and Shannon on TuneIn to listen.
How do you keep up on the latest NBA news, analysis, and rumors?
Again, Kawhi Leonard, 5th straight game in the series. He's at 30 or more.
On his podcast, The Low Post, ESPN's Zach Lowe brings in the sharpest minds in basketball to break down all the stories that matter.
It's so obvious that people talk around it but forget it sometimes, and that's that this is a very strange season. So we have teams that have had a 9-month layoff and teams that have had a 2-month layoff. We have guys
Search The Low Post on TuneIn to listen.
If you're new to sports podcasts, why not start with the most listened to sports podcast of all time, the Bill Simmons Podcast. Each episode, The Ringer's Bill Simmons is joined by a rotating crew of celebrities, athletes, and media mainstays for big discussions on the hottest topics in the sports world.
Aware of any and all aging QBs in cold weather unless they subscribe to the TB12 method. So
search the Bill Simmons Podcast on TuneIn to listen.
Visit Bloomberg.com. Ready for a fan-driven take on this season's MLB action? On the Beat the Shift podcast, superfans Alex Uy, Alex Rudy, Barbode Markazi, and Ray Estrada break down all the latest MLB news and drama while supplying you with top-notch fantasy baseball advice.
Well, I kind of want to start with maybe the least talked about one here is Adam Duvall, who just out of nowhere had a monster short season this past year.
Search Beat the Shift on TuneIn to listen.
Ever wonder what life is really like as a professional hockey player? On the Spit and Chicklets podcast, NHL veterans Ryan Whitney and Paul B. Sinnett joined Barstool sports writer Rear Admiral to share stories from their playing days while bringing their outspoken brand of commentary to the day's top headlines.
Yeah, that cameo request turned into an SNL skit. So
crazy.
How about that?
Thinking of you studying, I just pictured two pit bulls barking at each other.
Search Spit and Chicklets on TuneIn to listen.
Get social. Get social.
It's a new year. Why not try something new? Like following TuneIn on social media to stay in the know with all the amazing audio to come in 2021.
Follow us.
Facebook, Twitter, or even Instagram at TuneIn.
We know you're working from home these days.
Wages and salaries, personal income rather, up 0.6%.
Why not make those days a little bit better with TuneIn Premium? Premium gives you exclusive commercial-free news and music channels like CNN and Today's Hits, and fewer ads on over 100,000 more radio stations. Try it today for free.
The next time you're in the TuneIn app and playing your favorite station or podcast, just keep scrolling down on the screen. From there, you can quickly revisit your recent listening or explore personalized and similar recommendations based on your interests and location. Scroll and explore more on TuneIn.
Headlines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. U.S. stocks are declining amid lingering concerns about havoc created by volatile retail trading. The S&P 500 index is headed for its worst week since October as day traders' bids for heavily shorted stocks fuel speculation. Hedge funds won't need to reduce their market exposure. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. Right now, the S&P 500 is down about 0.9% or 32 points at 3753. The Dow Jones Industrial Average down 1% or 301 points at 30,301. And the Nasdaq's down 0.9% or 119 points at 13,216. 10-year Treasury down 13/32, yield 1.08%. Yield on the 2-year 0.11%. NYMEX crude oil up 1.1% or 57 cents at 52.91 a barrel. COMEX gold up 0.9% or $16.10 at 18.57.10 an ounce. The euro 1.2141 against the dollar. The yen 104.82. GameStop and AMC Entertainment soaring, signaling a return of volatility for stocks popular in internet chat rooms. Right now, GameStop is up about 77%. AMC is up more than 60%. Citron Research saying it will discontinue offering short sell analysis after 20 years of providing the service. Citron making the decision after battling with day traders over GameStop, and managing partner Andrew Left comments.
Now, after 20 years, we noticed something. Where we started Citron was to be against the establishment. We've actually become the establishment. We've done this whole thing without ever hiding from lawsuits, without ever hiding behind a pseudonym. But it's completely now lost its focus. So as of today, Citron Research will no longer be publishing what can be considered as short-selling reports.
And that's Citron Managing Partner Andrew Left. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom and Paul.
Karen, thanks so much. For Global Wall Street, there's no question about it. This is the interview of the day. If you're not part of Global Wall Street, let me explain. He was at Lehman Brothers, and he owned the high ground of the machinery of Wall Street. No one competed with Larry Tabb. You would steal his literature just to try to understand, what are we doing? What is all this innovation? And he is parachuted into Bloomberg Intelligence because of Paul Sweeney. And we are thrilled to bring you Larry Tabb in this moment of crisis. I should point out, he's the first quote for Andrew Ross Sorkin today in the deal book, the New York Times. Larry, I hope that was enough of a send up here. Larry, you did like 8-9 years ago testimony to Congress, and I love what you said. First, do no harm. What's your biggest fear of how we screw up the Wall Street market mechanism out of this debacle?
There are some bigger companies out there.
Well, first, thanks for that wonderful introduction.
I only did it because of Sweeney. I would not have done that.
Higher valuation. And our expectation more broadly for credit markets is that kind of an ongoing recovery.
There are a lot of ways that this could go sideways. That said, I'm not sure that it will, because if you think about it, okay, so what are the things that could go wrong here? First, you can look at a lot of the action as kind of a pump, a diversified pump and dump scheme. You look at Wall Street.
No, I would never think that.
You're taking the stocks and you're trading them up, and is there a reason to trade these things up? That said, there's not really a whole lot of folks to go against. This is really widely diversified. These names weren't really sold. They weren't pushed on investors. These are individual people making individual decisions. So it's kind of hard to see that gets went down.
I think it's fair where we are in
go ahead, Larry.
credit cycle.
No, go ahead, please.
The second may be about suitability, which could be an issue, especially that the state of Massachusetts is suing Robinhood about the suitability of giving folks access to options accounts. That could be an issue. And then, the other question would be is possibly about Reg Show and shorting, but that would actually be penalizing, some of the short sellers, which would actually be on the positive side, which is kind of what these individual guys are looking for. I'm not sure. These are just massive decisions made by multiple investors. There's no law saying that you can bid up a stock to an unreasonable value. But eventually these things are going to come down and settle at the right value.
Larry, there was a lot of pushback on social media yesterday against Robinhood and some of these other platforms for curtailing that trading, saying it was unfair. It amounted to maybe a little bit of a bailout, a daily bailout of the hedge funds. What do you make of some of the actions of some of these platforms yesterday?
From what I understand, it really has more to do with the clearance process. So the clearance process takes 2 days, and basically, instead of the broker being responsible for the settlement of the trade, basically ensuring that securities are delivered or received and folks get paid, the DTCC or the central counterparty kind of steps in as the counterparty to every other counterparty.
Yeah.
The problem is that it takes 2 days, and with a stock that's being valued anywhere between 20 or 30 and 500, or even more, I'm not sure what it is today.
I got time for one more question. I'm sorry, we're constrained for time. We've got to get you back on for a much longer conversation. Larry, I got one key question. $1 billion bailout last night. What in your head is the timeline of how long that $1 billion goes for Robinhood and their investors with the DTCC? Is it a timeline to this afternoon? Is it a timeline to somewhere out in February? Or does it get the job done?
Well, it depends on what happens today. But generally, the margin just lasts till the trades are settled, which is 2 days, and basically really 1 day until the DTCC takes the other side of the transaction. So these shouldn't be long-term loans. But that said, if they allow trading today and you still have the volatility, you'll wind up with this, kind of rolling into tomorrow and the next day.
This has been way too short.
The settlement process is 2 days.
Yeah, Larry, way too short. We got to get you on for a long time here, Paul. We'll lead you off sometime early next week. We're wrapped around your date calendar. Lawrence Tabb, he is with Bloomberg Intelligence, expert on the machinery. Boy, Paul, you just see his authority there.
Yeah,
just the understanding of the sausage making.
Yeah, exactly right, Tom. Making the sausage, settling these trades, getting the cash from one party to another, and the securities from one party to another. Then when you have these electronic platforms, Tom, it's new. It's new ground to a certain extent. And when you see the volatility that we've seen really over the last couple of weeks in some of these markets, putting stress on the system, I guess is the
Remember when you and I were young idiots, and we looked at the people in the cage,
Yep,
like they were from a foreign planet, and some guy with gray hair would come up to you and say, "See that woman there? She needs a bottle of champagne."
That's right. Well, yeah, they usually come out to me and said, "I wrote up my trade ticket incorrectly, and I have to do it over again because he's not going to execute my trade." So that's usually what happened.
That woman over there, she's going to save your career.
That's right.
In the next 3 years. Larry Tabb, legendary, and with Bloomberg Intelligence, we wanted to give you a window there into what we're doing. GameStop churning at the low end for the day, but I don't want to oversell that. By no means a spike down. 331 up from the 193 level today. A major surveillance shout out to our team in London, in New York, our Bass team in Hong Kong who have kept it going all week. The Dow in negative 269. This is Bloomberg. Stay with us.
This week on the New Yorker Radio Hour, I'll talk with staff writers Jane Mayer and Evan Osnos about the balance of power in Washington, the Democrats' razor-thin control of Congress, the Republican infighting over the insurrection, and the ambitious first 100 days plan of President Biden. That's the New Yorker Radio Hour from WNYC Studios. Listen to this episode on TuneIn today.
Be well, stay safe in this market and elsewhere. We'll continue the conversation.
You don't have to wait until spring training to get back into baseball. Just turn on the Roto World Baseball podcast to stay current on the latest offseason stories, along with scouting reports and strategies for spring training your own fantasy baseball team.
We've seen statistically over the years, baseball is one of the most coin flippy sports when it comes to the postseason. We talk about a team that's also got the second lowest batting average in the American League.
Search Roto World Baseball on TuneIn to listen.
Save! You're working from home, right? Why not make your background listening more enjoyable with TuneIn Premium?
TuneIn Premium is your key to unlocking commercial-free news coverage from CNN, Fox News Radio, MSNBC, and more.
Now, let's turn back to politics. We're here. Plus, non-stop music channels for every mood and activity.
Not to mention less ads on over 100,000 radio stations from around the world.
Search Premium to hear it for yourself.
Gotta catch a flight? Long road trip ahead? Wi-Fi connection spotty? Make sure you're never without something to listen to by offlining your podcasts on TuneIn. Just find your favorite podcast and tap the 3 dots to download the episode you want to hear. When you're off the grid, you'll find all your offline audio under your favorites.
And also wealth management and asset management in the 3 to 5 years.
Break down all the lines and matchups in college basketball with the Hoopin' with Hoops podcast. From power conferences like the ACC, Big Ten, and Pac-12 to the ones you've never heard of, Greg Hoops Peterson covers it all.
We've got a tremendous podcast for you. Unlike my normal podcast where I answer some Twitter questions, take a look at what all transpired yesterday and everything like that, well, this is the Saturday edition. And you guys know...
Search Hoopin' with Hoops on TuneIn to listen. Want someone to talk to about your latest audio adventures? Well, so do we. Share what you're listening to on TuneIn by tagging us in Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram posts. Then make sure to follow TuneIn on your platform of choice so we can share all your favorite news stations, events, podcasts with you. Get social, discover new things, and spread the love of listening with TuneIn.
Follow us. Hashtag. It's social. Get social.
You can enter phrases or ask
ask questions.
If you know anything about the world of professional soccer, you know they don't call it Premier League for nothing. On the Two Robbies podcast, listen to former players Robbie Mustoe and Robbie Earl discuss the top storylines and matches from the most exciting soccer league in the world.
I mean, it's a sackable offence, by the way. It's a sackable offence, Robbie Mustoe, at this level of football. Yeah. If that was your
Search the Two Robbies using the number 2 to listen.
Financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Markets with Bonnie Quinn and Paul Sweeney.
How do you kind of view the volatility in the marketplace here?
We have a completely different climate strategy.
Companies across the board, across industries, really trying to shore up their balance sheets.
There's very, very disturbing dynamics at work.
Breaking market news and insight from Bloomberg experts.
The strong dollar policy, I think, is a lot of its rhetoric. Because of all the dislocations, there's always relative value trades that you could be doing.
The only issue is how hot can home prices go? It's the uncertainty, I think, that is really spooking everyone.
This is Bloomberg Markets with Bonnie Quinn and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Good Friday morning from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio in New York City and points beyond to our worldwide audience. Coming up, we're going to get the latest on markets trading, including GameStop and the other day trading stocks that are showing a volatile trading day today. Plus, the conversation of the morning. We're going to talk to the Chief Scientific Officer at Eli Lilly, who's going to discuss the role that Lilly's COVID-19 antibody therapies are playing in the fight against the pandemic. But first, let's go to Greg Jarrett of Bloomberg News for a Bloomberg Business Flash. Greg.
Anderson worked on repairing stocks down, Paul, this amid lingering concerns about the havoc created by volatile retail trading that was bespoke. Treasury yields, gold, and oil are up on optimism, and the pandemic lockdowns will fuel economic growth. Mike Wilson, Morgan Stanley Chief U.S. Equity Strategist and CIO, tells Bloomberg.
And that's what I think longer-term investors need to appreciate, which is we're still at the beginning of a new economic cycle. We're still, in a very highly liquid environment, and we have a bull market. So you don't want to get too cute, but you do want to be careful with the things that are extraordinarily overpriced, and we've been saying for months. And when you look really use this as an opportunity to buy some of those things, perhaps leverage a reopening that you missed. Perhaps over the last 3 months.
Let's check the markets. The S&P is down 0.7%, down 25. The Dow's down 0.8%, down 240. And the Nasdaq's down 0.6%, down 90. The 10 years down 12.30 seconds with a yield of 1.08%. West Texas Intermediate Crude is up over 1% at 52.88 a barrel. COMEX Gold's up 1.4% at 18.66.70 an ounce. The dollar yen 104.79. The euro $1.21.48. The British pound $1.37.27. Citron Research says it'll discontinue offering short sell analysis after 20 years of providing the service. Citron made the decision after fighting with day traders over GameStop earlier this month. It suspended a scheduled live stream aimed at explaining its position on the company due to too many people hacking Citron Twitter. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Bloomberg Markets is on with Bonnie Quinn and Paul Sweeney.
Thanks, Greg Jarrett. Well, I am looking at the indices. I am seeing that they are down 0.2% to 0.75% for the Dow, and I'm very curious as to what's going on today. It is Friday. It is the day that Redditors had said would be the final day for GameStop. So, Dave Wilson, come on in and tell us how many shares of GameStop are being traded already.
It's a pretty busy day, no question. Just looking at the numbers, GameStop above 12 million shares, but you really want, volume. Try AMC Entertainment, another of the stocks that has become a favorite with the Reddit crowd pushing 150 million already. And, these stocks have kind of bounced back. They've given up some of their gains from overnight, but still a whole lot higher after really taking hits yesterday. GameStop up 55%. At the moment, AMC up 39%, and a whole lot of the other stocks favored by the Reddit crowd higher as well. But beyond that, you look at the broader market, you see all 11 of the main industry groups in the S&P 500 lower. Communication services leading the way down, and that's in large measure what's going on with Charter Communications, the cable company. Those shares down 6.5%. 1.5%. What's interesting is that, we got results yesterday from Comcast and one of their biggest competitors. And, it was all about internet subscriptions and how they were going up still in the face of the coronavirus pandemic. At Charter, though, you didn't get the kind of growth on the internet side of their business that people were anticipating. So the shares taking a hit. We've also seen Comcast go down as well. Look at the moment, the shares, they're off 1.7% after having risen 6.6% yesterday. So a very different story out of Charter than you had out of Comcast.
One of my favorite companies to watch on a quarterly basis, Dave, when their earnings come out, is Caterpillar. Just a great reflection on how the agricultural economy is doing, how the industrial economy is doing. Cat came out with some numbers that beat estimates.
Yeah, they did, and the shares are being rewarded for that. They're up 1.9% at the moment. Struggling to care for special needs so definitely positive. When you looked at the fourth quarter earnings and sales, they beat analyst average estimates in a Bloomberg survey. So, if you're kind of taking Caterpillar as an economic indicator, it looks like a plus. On the other hand, let's say you take a company like Honeywell International. I mean, they're big in building controls, that sort of thing. And those numbers didn't go over so well, in part because Honeywell's first quarter earnings forecast really doesn't measure up to what analysts are looking for. So that stock's down 1.7%. So you've definitely got a back and forth in terms of the reaction to earnings reports that's out there.
What is the fallout from the last few days trading? Have many people had to liquidate some of their stocks in order to cover others or cover other positions or protect themselves in some way?
Well, I mean, there's no doubt that some of that has gone on, and the question that arises today is whether we're going to see more of that. It hasn't become extreme in any case. I'm looking at this exchange traded fund that tracks the top picks among hedge funds as determined by Goldman Sachs. It's called the Goldman Sachs Hedge Industry VIP ETF, the ticker GVIP. It's down 1.1% today, but it's basically kind of moved inverse to what's happened with the likes of GameStop this week. So, down big on Wednesday, rebounding yesterday, off again today. So, we'll have to watch whether that turns out to be an indicator of what the hedge funds are doing here.
We had some more vaccination news today, Dave. Johnson & Johnson out with some results of their vaccine. And Sam Fazeli at Bloomberg Intelligence, who's kind of my go-to guy, I just asked him for his quick reaction. He said, quote, good, not great. And I think the stock kind of reflects that a little bit.
Absolutely. And it's not just J&J stock that reflects it. The shares of other companies that are making or developing COVID-19 vaccines do too. And that's certainly a story today that you haven't seen all week, like you have with the likes of GameStop. J&J down 4.1% at the moment. They had a 66% effectiveness rate for their vaccine in a global trial. And, people got used to seeing numbers of 90% or higher. So J&J didn't quite measure up on that score. I mean, some analysts will tell you, it's a perfectly fine result, in terms of being able to deal with the vaccine shortages. Nonetheless, you look, Moderna is up about 11%. You look at Pfizer, it's up 1.8%. Germany's BioNTech, Pfizer's partner in their vaccine, up 3.7% U.S. trading. And a smaller company, Novavax, up 49%. Now, they had results that showed their vaccine was 89% effective in the UK trial. Not so much against the virus variant found in South Africa, where they also tried the drug. Nonetheless, I mean, the data being much better received out of Novavax than out of J&J.
For sure. I'll tell you one thing, though. A tweet by Scott Gottlieb that our producer sent us actually gave me a lot of encouragement. He writes this: the J&J vaccine turns in a fantastic result. We now have 3 highly effective vaccines. The vaccine showed sustained and increasing immune protection over time, perhaps from a robust early induction of memory immune cells. He also says the one-shot vaccine was highly effective at preventing severe disease, even with new variants, and that the milieu of disease now is more complex. So it does seem like perhaps this might be a little bit better than it just looks from the immediate numbers.
Yeah, and I don't think it has to be deeply refrigerated as well.
Exactly, which is another positive.
Yeah.
All the better. Dave Wilson, thank you. We'll talk to you next hour at the One Dave on Twitter. And of course, Market Drivers is brought to you by New Jersey Institute of Technology, ranked in the top 2% nationally for alumni mid-career earnings, and number 1 for student upward economic mobility. Learn more at njit.edu. So we'll obviously continue to follow this market. Right now, the S&P down 0.7%, the Nasdaq down 0.8%, the Dow down 0.7%, and it's being considered a not great week for equities. Let's get down to D.C. now and all the D.C. news with Nathan Hager.
Vani, the Securities and Exchange Commission says it will closely review actions by regulated entities that may disadvantage investors or inhibit their ability to trade certain securities. Lawmakers from across the political spectrum have been demanding answers after platforms like Robinhood put the brakes on trades in GameStop and other stocks that have become social media favorites. More from Bloomberg Politics editor Kathleen Hunter.
If you look at the kind of the liberal wing of the Democratic Party, and you look at then at the Republican sort of populist wing of the Republican Party, I think that, there are sentiments that are similar on this issue in both of those factions, even though on many other issues they're very, very far apart.
The heads of the House and Senate Finance Committees are promising hearings on this week's action in the market, so there's no word on the timing on that. Johnson & Johnson says its one-shot vaccine against coronavirus generates strong protection. Dr. Matai Mamet is J&J's head of R&D.
It's 85% effective in preventing severe COVID.
And 66% effective against moderate cases. Now, those numbers do trail Pfizer and Moderna's efficacy rates, but those vaccines require 2 doses, and J&J's shot can be kept in a refrigerator. The White House says President Biden is encouraged by that data. That's according to White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki. President Biden gets his first formal briefing on the economy today. New York Times reports Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen will lead it from the Oval Office. Vice President Kamala Harris will be there as well. That says the recovery shows signs of slowing, and the White House pushes to pass another round of stimulus before current benefits run out in March. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. This
Here at Dave, we're over the moon that people have stopped talking about our repeats and started noticing our original comedies. Like at Katrina Chick, who called them surprisingly adequate shows. What an endorsement! And that's not the only one.
Reasonably good telly.
Surprisingly quite entertaining. With brand new Hypothetical.
Enjoy the show, nerd.
Meet the Richardsons.
We've had a lot of positive feedback.
And Mel Gedroych, Unforgivable.
It's good, isn't it?
It's fair to say there's some surprisingly adequate brand new comedy on Dave.
We're still open for drive-through and McDelivery, but helping keep you and our team safe is our priority. So we have fewer people working. We have screens in our kitchens and service areas. We're washing our hands more regularly and cleaning equipment and surfaces even more often too. And from pickup to drop-off, delivery is contact-free. With smaller teams, service will take longer than usual, so thank you for your patience. For specific restaurant hours, visit mcdonalds.co.uk or download our app. Opening hours may vary.
How do you keep up on the latest NBA news, analysis, and rumors?
I can. Kawhi Leonard, 5th straight game in the series. He's at 30 or more.
On his podcast, The Low Post, ESPN's Zach Lowe brings in the sharpest minds in basketball to break down all the stories that matter.
It's so obvious that people talk around it but forget it sometimes, and that's that this is a very strange season. So we have teams that have had a 9-month layoff and teams that have had a 2-month layoff. We have guys
Search The Low Post on TuneIn to listen.
The next time you're in the TuneIn app and playing your favorite station or podcast, just keep scrolling down the screen. From there, you can quickly revisit your recent listening while discovering personalized and similar recommendations based on your interests and location. Listening to CNN, MSNBC, or Fox News Radio? Scroll to see a schedule of upcoming programs. Listening to today's hits? Scroll to see the latest songs you just heard. Listening to a live NHL game? Scroll to see when your team's next matchup is. Scroll and explore more on TuneIn.
I found him to be really Want someone to talk to about your latest audio ventures? Well, so do we.
Follow us on Instagram.
Follow us.
Share what you're listening to on TuneIn by tagging us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram posts. Then make sure to follow TuneIn on the platform of your choice so we can share all our favorite new stations, events, and podcasts with you.
This album was the result of
Hear ye. Articles of impeachment.
The European Union as one united. Get social, discover new things, and spread the love of listening with TuneIn.
Ready for a fan-driven take on this season's MLB action? On the Beat the Shift podcast, superfans Alex Uri, Alex Rudy, Barbode Markazi, and Ray Estrada break down all the latest MLB news and drama while supplying you with top-notch fantasy baseball advice.
Well, I kind of want to start with maybe the least talked about one here is Adam Duvall, who just out of nowhere had a monster shortened season this past year.
Search Beat the Shift on TuneIn to listen. Your work routine has changed. Why not change up your listening routine with TuneIn Premium? Premium unlocks commercial-free news and music channels.
Websites and apps in India are starting to disrupt the matchmaking industry. More and more.
Plus, less ads on 100,000 radio stations from around the world.
Real music, what I listen to.
You're always playing one of my favorite songs, Go Country 105.
Hear it for yourself with a free trial.
Horoscope.
Gotta catch a flight? Long road trip ahead? Wi-Fi connection spotty? Make sure you're never without something to listen to by offlining your podcasts on TuneIn. Just find your favorite podcast and tap the 3 dots to download the episode you want to hear. When you're off the grid, you'll find all your offline audio under your favorites.
For the proposal, but it was primarily our decision that we wanted to.
Today's top stories got you down. Lighten the mood with TuneIn's uplifting selection of music stations for every taste. Head to the music section to get your groove back.
Yeah, that's our language basically.
Have you heard the most unscripted, unfiltered, and unhinged sports show in the game? On the Skip and Shannon Undisputed podcast, Skip Bayless, Shannon Sharp, and Jenny Taft discuss the biggest stories in the world of sports.
Father Time is at least sort of looking over one shoulder right now. LeBron, you remember me?
The one thing, even Skip, because, okay, they cut some games last year. That was 10, 12 games that he averaged 25. That's another 250, 275
Search
points.
Skip and Shannon on TuneIn to listen.
This week on the New Yorker Radio Hour, I'll talk with staff writers Jane Mayer and Evan Osnos about the balance of power in Washington, the Democrats' razor-thin control of Congress, the Republican infighting over the insurrection, and the ambitious first 100 days plan of President Biden. That's the New Yorker Radio Hour from WNYC Studios. Listen to this episode on TuneIn.
The website makes money by charging commission from vendors.
People don't want to be
Focus every business day. The Bloomberg Markets Podcast with Paul Sweeney and Bonnie Quinn.
Are there some sectors that you want to have more or less exposure to?
Market sell-off following global once again.
Analysis of the day's Wall Street action.
What's the thought on Apple here?
From Bloomberg Intelligence, Bloomberg Opinion, and influential newsmakers.
There's very, very disturbing dynamics at work.
Bloomberg Markets with Paul Sweeney and Bonnie Quinn. Subscribe today at BloombergRadio.com, the Bloomberg Business app, or iTunes.
Get married in India.
The lifeblood of tech startups isn't just money. It's executive and technical skills. The kind of skills that companies need to build real products. And the skills that venture capitalist Chris Sugden of Edison Partners sees in the graduates that are coming out of New Jersey Institute of Technology.
The amazing thing about NJIT is their graduates, they have multiple offers on average, not just one. They're coming out with real skill sets that are immediately hireable and available to them. I think we see an understanding by the faculty and administration at NJIT that we've got to train and educate the whole student, not just their, one side of their brain. And I do think that's sort of part of the DNA today. There's practical and there's sort of academia, and merging those two together and understanding that if we're going to have our young people go get great jobs and have great successful careers, they've got to have both sides of their brain activated. And I think we see that with NJIT.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Stocks are down. In fact, they're heading toward their worst week since late October amid lingering concerns about the problems created by volatile trading and retail. Treasury yields, gold, and oil are up on optimism to end the pandemic lockdowns will fuel economic growth. Let's look at those numbers now. The S&P 500 is down 0.5%, down 20. Dow's down 0.6%, down 195, and the Nasdaq's down 0.5%, down 60. The 10-year is down 12.36 with a yield of 1.08%. West Texas Intermediate crude is up just over 1% at 52.88 a barrel, while COMEX gold is up 1.25% at 18.6430 an ounce. The dollar yen 104.71, the euro $1.21.41, and the British pound $1.31.17. GameStop took back Thursday's $11 billion blow as traders using apps like Robinhood Markets and ET Trade rallied behind the video game retailer after brokerages said they would ease trading restrictions. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett.
You're listening to Bloomberg Markets with Bonnie Quinn and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Sarah Pontek is in studio, cross-asset reporter here at Bloomberg. And Sarah, just, we could begin anywhere, but I kind of like this headline on our MLive blog. It says, more juice to be squeezed in the land of the shorts. It's a very intriguing headline. Are there still shorts out there, and are they hiding right now?
Yes, there are still shorts out there, and you can just see that if you look at short interest as a percent of shares outstanding or as a percentage of float on many of these stocks, then you see some of the juice, if we want to call it, being squeezed this morning. GameStop, for example, currently up 59%. Koss, the headphone maker, up 48%. AMC up 46% as we speak right now. So after we did see the sell-off yesterday, brokerages placing restrictions, now there has been an easing of those restrictions. At the same time, you have the likes of Citron Research coming out and saying that they are going to stop their short-selling research, and we see a comeback in the making for many of these stocks.
So, Sarah, we see the markets trading off today. Do we have evidence that part of this market movement day to day here this week has been, in fact, influenced by some of these hedge funds looking to liquidate some of their bigger positions across the market to stave off some of the losses on these shorts? Is there evidence to that effect?
So that is the understanding right now. As a loose proxy, if you look at an ETF that trades under the ticker GVIP, you can see that over the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of the 7 last days have been lower. Wednesday, a drop of 4.3%. Today, we also see it down 0.8%. My colleague Lu Wang has actually written a lot about this too, and she's gotten data from Goldman Sachs Prime Brokerage Unit. And what it shows is that outflows from hedge funds and degrossing has actually been happening at the fastest rate since October of 2014. So there is some evidence that shows that hedge funds have had to de-risk, and you can see it in certain pockets of the market, particularly like this ETF, which tracks favorite hedge fund long positions. Not only have they been attacked on the short end of their book, they're having a hard time on the long end of the book too.
Sarah, explain to us a little bit more about the Citron Research decision. I presume they're still going to short stocks. They're just not going to publish their research. Is that it? It had been open before. And then as part of that question, does that leave us open to fraud? Like, for example, Enron and all of these other major fraudulent instances that we may not have found out about if there hadn't been short sellers.
So what Citron said in their announcement was that they will focus on giving long-side multi-bagger opportunities for individual investors. Now, I'm sure we'll get more information. My understanding is that, yes, they're just not going to publish the research. But then again, this is still developing. I'm sure we'll get more information. But that's the issue right now. Why would any short seller want to be an activist short that publishes their short list if they know that a Reddit community with now 6 million users is just going to gather to try to create a short squeeze and hurt their position? We know that the likes of Citron, other hedge funds that had short positions on some of these stocks have suffered billions of dollars worth of losses this week, and you see that culminating in Citron's decision today, halting 20 years of their short selling analysis. So unsure what this truly means, and also going forwards. We know this is now being looked at very closely, not just on Wall Street, not just on Reddit, but in Washington, D.C., and the SEC is looking into this as well. So the question really is there going to be new regulation that comes out from this saga? And two, if so, where is it going to focus? What are the changes that can actually be made? And you wonder if if any of that will fit on the short seller side of the equation.
Well, because Paul, I mean, the likes of Jim Chanos has done a lot of good for the market over the years. It would be an awful pity to see people like that just go into the corner and hide.
I agree. I think it's revived kind of this discussion we've had periodically over the years, for a long time, about the value of short selling. Is it a valuable, is it a valuable practice in the marketplace? And while a lot of people think no, there's a lot of people who say, just like you're saying, Bonnie, that it does do a lot for market integrity. Sarah, one of the issues I was looking at was so many of these companies are seeing their stocks, rally so much. Are any of these companies coming to market trying to sell stock and take advantage of this?
They certainly are. There's a story on the terminal right now that headline Reddit favorites eye stock sales after retail fueled rallies. And I mean, you can't really blame some of these companies for doing so. They're taking advantage of market.
We're in the midst of
they're taking advantage of capital markets. American Airlines, for example, announced plans to sell up to $1.1 billion of shares. We've also seen Sundial Growers, which has been another one of these favorites lately that's been a part of the mania, which is a pot stock. They announced a $100 million stock sale at a discount to yesterday's closing price. So certainly, companies are taking advantage of this. This happened earlier in the week as well with AMC taking advantage of the pop in their share prices. They raised $305 million. So you can't really blame these companies for doing so. They're taking advantage of an opportunity.
Tough regulations, which
yeah, that's for sure. Sarah, thank you so much for joining us. We have to talk to you next week as well about various other things, including the dollar and
particularly
the
among
VIX.
the progressive left.
So other parts of the market, Bonnie. We have to, besides GameStop, we have to focus on other parts of the market.
Cross asset, exactly. Did you see the VIX up to 29 today, Paul?
Yeah, exactly. And then, Tom Keene really tracks the VIX very closely. He pointed that out this morning. But it just goes to show that, again, the volatility and uncertainty in the market, Bonnie.
Yeah, for sure. Sarah Ponzak, cross-asset reporter at Bloomberg News, thank you so much. I do want to point out that the 10-year yield is absolutely just flown up there as well. We're back at 108.08. We were below 1 yesterday, so this volatility is really across the market, and crude oil as well, while we're looking at it, is very close to $53 a barrel.
Yeah, and I'd be remiss if we didn't talk about Bitcoin up about 11.5%, $3,800 is now trading at north of $37,000.
Introduce the bank on student loans. America's pastime is a big deal. It's also big business. Baseball Biz is the podcast about the business of baseball, covering everything from MLB history and operations to interviews with players, agents, owners, scouts, umpires, and beyond.
We have the regular baseball season. We get all involved with everything with, the World Series. Thank goodness. It's the most exciting thing you have. But then you say, what happens after that? Well,
Search Baseball Biz in one word on TuneIn to listen. Did you know that with TuneIn's local radio feature, you can stream live FM and AM stations broadcasting in your area?
This is Weeby 108.
Hear your favorite frequencies and hosts in smooth streaming quality.
104.1 KRBE.
And discover local news, talk, and music stations you didn't even know existed.
In-depth discussions.
Navigate to the local radio section under Browse to listen locally on TuneIn.
Take TuneIn with you wherever you go with TuneIn on demand. Jumping on a flight or planning a long road trip? Download episodes of your favorite podcast and enjoy hours of great audio content no matter where you are. When you're ready to escape, head to your favorites, hit play, and listen with or without a Wi-Fi connection. Featuring top podcasts in every genre.
And then I discovered alcohol, and I love that
really galvanized a lot of support for her. It's been very hard for Republicans to get much of anything done this year, and that's at least in part to this resistance movement that Elizabeth
This week on the New Yorker Radio Hour, I'll talk with staff writers Jane Mayer and Evan Osnos about the balance of power in Washington. The Democrats' razor-thin control of Congress, the Republican infighting over the insurrection, and the ambitious first 100 days plan of President Biden. That's the New Yorker Radio Hour from WNYC Studios. Listen to this episode on TuneIn today.
Trump win in 2016. It's anyone's guess if she will endure what Hillary.
Ready for the inside scoop on the hottest topics in the NBA?
Elizabeth Warren is whether she can go from being a liberal firebrand.
Turn on the Woj pod to hear the biggest names in the game. Join ESPN's Adrian Wojnarowski for in-depth conversations, breaking news, reaction, and analysis.
Well, if you're looking to sell short euro, it's time to sell short, and I'm placing an order to sell it at 121.44.5. And as you can see, position opened at 121.44.5. Okay?
It's on TuneIn. Just find your favorite podcast and tap the 3 dots to download the episode you want to hear. When you're off the grid, you'll find all your offline audio under your favorites.
Ready for the loudest, most correct sports opinions in the history of the spoken word?
Feels great. We got it cleaned the other day. It's already dirty again, but that's what we like.
On Pardon My Take, a.k.a. your favorite new sports podcast, Big Cat and PFT Commenter bring you daily topics, special guests, and a money-back guarantee for a better life.
Passes are so bad. It was pass interference, but the pass was so bad, you're like, but it can't be pass interference.
Search Pardon My Take on TuneIn to listen. Got your resolutions all set? Why not add another to the list and follow TuneIn on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter?
Add TuneIn.
It's the easiest way to discover new audio to soundtrack the new year.
Ready to take your audio love to the next level?
Perhaps it's time you tried out TuneIn Premium.
Experience a better way of listening with commercial-free news, coverage from CNN, Fox News Radio, MSNBC, and more.
We likely, almost certainly, are going to be vaccinating them.
Non-stop music channels for every mood and activity.
And less ads on 100,000 radio stations.
Search Premium on TuneIn
to try it today.
Ever wonder what Tony Kornheiser is thinking about today? Wonder no more with The Tony Kornheiser Show, a daily podcast that starts with sports and quickly moves into politics, current events, entertainment, and whatever happens to be on Tony's mind.
No, I didn't buy them.
I got to
Your
jump
mother
in.
bought them. Whoppers are so great. I like
individually,
Whoppers.
but not in a.
There's
in a
only
mixed
3.
bag.
They only come 3. The portion is.
Search The Tony Kornheiser Show on TuneIn to listen.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Markets.
Coming up, we're going to continue to follow this story about market volatility as the VIX, lower today but still at 29, continues its trajectory. We have Aaron Brown, former Chief Risk Manager at AQR Capital Management, and Bloomberg Opinion columnist coming right up. Let's get now to Greg Jarrett for Bloomberg Business Flash.
Well, thank you, Bonnie. The S&P is slumping again as day traders bids for heavily shorted stocks fuel speculation. Hedge funds would need to reduce their market exposure. 10-year Treasury yields have climbed toward 1.1% after Johnson & Johnson said its one-shot vaccine generated strong protection against COVID-19, though it's less effective against the South African variant. Citron quits a part of its research business. In a video tweet, Andrew left. Citron Research says the firm is ending short-selling research.
Now, after 20 years, we noticed something. Where we started Citron was to be against the establishment. We've actually become the establishment. We've done this whole thing without ever hiding from lawsuits, without ever hiding behind a pseudonym. But it's completely now lost its focus. So as of today, Citron Research will no longer be publishing what can be considered as short-selling reports.
Let's check the markets now. The S&P's down 0.4%, down 15. The Dow's down 0.5%, down 166. And the Nasdaq's down 0.3%, down 36. The 10-year's down 10, 30 seconds with a yield of 1.08%. West Texas Intermediate crude oil is up 1.1% at $52.93 a barrel, with COMEX gold up 1.1% at $18.6220 an ounce. The dollar yen at 104.71. The euro is $1.2145, and the pound $1.3721. Gauge of U.S. pending home sales fell for the 4th consecutive month in December, reflecting further weakness in the Midwest as rising prices slowed momentum in the housing market. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett.
Bloomberg opinion, informed perspectives, and expert data-driven commentary on breaking news.
It is 10:33 on Wall Street, time for Bloomberg Opinion. Today we're joined by Aaron Brown. He's a columnist for Bloomberg Opinion, also the former chief risk manager at AQR Capital Management based in New York City. Aaron, thanks so much for joining us here. So as we take a look at this day trading phenomenon, the GameStops, the AMCs of the world, first of all, are you surprised that a hedge fund, the size and the expertise of Melvin Capital Management with billions under assets under management, are you surprised that they were hurt so badly at the beginning of this?
Muslim mayor of a major Western capital, and proud of it.
Shorting and market arbitrage has always been a very risky game,
to a lawyer,
and
lawmaker, and now the mayor of London.
It's just par for the course. Normally, you make some easy money, but once in a while,
parents
you get
emigrated
killed
from
on a
Pakistan.
trade like this.
His father was a bus driver, his mother a stay-at-home seamstress.
It's a tiny little bit reminiscent of LTCM, right? I mean, you would have imagined that
in South London.
he either wouldn't leave traces,
dentist, but TV in the
Gabe Plotkin that is, or
otherwise.
that he would have some other kind of trade on that might mitigate any potential danger to this huge short.
He graduated in 1991
hedge
with a
funds
degree in law from North London
are in the
University
business of taking risks, making big directional
worked a
positions,
number of
and
high-profile
you do
cases,
take your lumps
often clashing with
sometimes.
London's
And we've
Metropolitan
seen some
Police
of the most
Force.
successful
But
traders.
he had bigger
LTCM is a good
political
example.
ambitions.
Amaranth is another
This
example.
is what being a new MP is
well,
like, squatting on a
and all it
bench in the
takes
absence of an office,
one
dealing with letters from
bad trade. The
constituents.
people who are low risk, the people who are hedging everything, who get out,
reports are just coming in of an explosion
those people survive, but they don't make the giant profits of John Paul. Everyone's just asking.
So, Aaron, I mean, short selling and short squeezes have been around since the beginning of financial markets. I guess what's different about this one is the advent and the use of social media, number one, and number two, the zero fee or zero commission trading, which really opens it up to a much wider audience here. Are you surprised that Robinhood yesterday and some other of these platforms chose to limit trading in some of these names?
Thomas Penny, one of Bloomberg's Westminster
I wasn't surprised by Robinhood. Robinhood has been under very intense regulatory pressure, a lot of suspicion, and I think Robinhood is going to have to protect itself from this kind of thing. I was
in 2015, a decade after the attacks, Khan ran for mayor of London, and his faith was back in the headlines. His opponent, Zach Goldsmith, trying to link Khan to radical Islam.
All these politicians and people are suddenly shocked to find out they're day traders or gambling.
Extreme and accused him of associating with, quote, those who seek to do our police and capital.
It's just a lot more prominent. Reddit,
the former Prime Minister David
and,
Cameron repeated the allegations.
Some of the
He shared a platform with Sajil Shahid, the man who trained the ringleader of the 7/7 attacks and accused the United States of bringing 9/11 on themselves.
A little bit in 2021.
But the smears didn't stick.
Aaron, would you have approved this trade, or if it started smaller, would you have approved the expansion of it as time went on?
This election.
I mean, Craig, the Melvin trade is what I'm saying, not the Robinhood trades.
And I'm so proud.
I was a risk manager for a very different kind of hedge fund, a very, a quant fund that runs very low risk strategy, very carefully
After taking the mayor's office with a comfortable majority, Khan has brought a business-like efficiency to the role, scrapping expensive vanity projects like the Garden Bridge and the new Routemaster buses, which cost £350,000.
If you're not willing to take these kinds of risks,
the former lawyer who used to fight the police in court.
Aaron, do you expect regulators, Congress, regulators, the SEC, to step in here in a meaningful way, or is this something that might just blow over?
Well, the problem, they're all obviously, excited about it. They would love to do something about it, but nobody knows what to do. I suspect what's going to happen is there's going to be more restriction on small investors.
Khan's kept his faith at the fore. He's an outspoken voice for moderate Muslims
the people on Robinhood who are playing with $100, this is a great, everybody makes mistakes in the market. You don't want to make these at 50 when you're betting your house and you got a family to support in retirement.
But given the impression,
do it at 100 when you're a college student.
You're
this is how you
playing
learn
to the
about the
hands of the
market.
extremists.
So I
The
think
ongoing
it's great
spat spat between Khan and US President Donald Trump escalated when Trump went after Khan, was quoting him on Twitter just hours after the terrorist attacks of June 3rd.
Stop on profit. Euro, I'm placing at 121.42.5. 142.5. Okay, stop placed. So whatever happened, guys, you will not be loser. You will make a profit, yeah? So never place stop loss. Always play. I don't know why brokers call it stop loss. Stop on profit. Supposed to be called, right? Okay, speak to you later, guys.
And things are reopening. I think we've done some very fundamental shifts over the last 12 months now.
Yes.
In the economy, and we haven't seen them. They're underground.
Well, Aaron, you'll have to come back and tell us more about that because it's that's what they call a tease. We'll need you back soon. Aaron Brown, former Chief Risk Manager at AQR Capital Management. Let's get down to D.C. now for all of the D.C. news with Nathan Hager.
Well, Vonnie, in its most specific comments yet about the recent stock market mania, the Securities and Exchange Commission says it is looking for potential misconduct and will review brokers' decisions to halt trading in certain shares. This comes as progressive Democrats and populist Republicans alike are criticizing Robinhood and other platforms for curbing trades in GameStop and other social media favorites that have seen wild swings in recent days. In a tweet, Democrat Ro Khanna said Robinhood CEO Vlad Tenev needs to disclose any talks his company may have had with Citadel. Tenev says it took action on those shares to protect the firm and customers. The White House says President Joe Biden is going to sign his immigration orders on Tuesday. The president had originally planned to do that today, but Press Secretary Jen Psaki says the orders have been held up due to the delayed confirmation for Homeland Security nominee Alejandro Mayorkas. Psaki says the president will announce a task force on immigration to be led by the new Homeland Secretary. President Biden's push to reopen schools in 100 days during the pandemic may fall short. Bloomberg's Amy Morris reports.
The top infectious disease specialist in the U.S., Dr. Anthony Fauci, told the National Education Association during a virtual event that opening all the K-8 schools may not happen. He says there may be, in his words, mitigating circumstances that would make that 100-day goal difficult to achieve in some places, as first reported by CNN. Fauci told the 6,000 teachers they can expect support from Washington to fund sanitation upgrades and other safety measures. In Washington, I'm Amy Morris, Bloomberg Radio.
Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. This is Bloomberg.
Got your resolutions all set? Why not add another to the list and follow TuneIn on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter?
Add TuneIn.
It's the easiest way to discover new audio to soundtrack the new year.
Want to know what's happening in the football universe? Pass it over to the ESPN FC podcast to hear the worldwide leader in sports break down news, highlights, and analysis from the most popular sport in the world.
Going into this, you're just not going to scare anybody.
Yeah.
Zinedine Zidane said it's like a final because if they lose this game, then they have 1 point from 3 matches.
Search ESPN FC on TuneIn to listen.
Ever wonder what life is really like as a professional hockey player? On the Spit and Chicklets podcast, NHL vet.
Okay, I'm gonna move my stop on profit to 121.39.5. Okay, stop move profit. So if you're following the trades, do the same things. Okay. See you later.
On TuneIn to listen.
Government secrets, classified documents, and leaked emails from some of the world's
This week on the New Yorker Radio Hour, I'll talk with staff writers Jane Mayer and Evan Osno about the balance of power in Washington.
This
Democrats
is how an
raising
Australian
control of
programmer
Congress,
sequestered in the
Republican
Ecuadorian embassy
infighting
in
over the
London
insurrection,
became one of the
and
most
the ambitious
influential
first
and
100
notorious
days plan
people in the
of
world.
President Biden. That's the New Yorker
Born in
Radio Hour,
1971 in
WNYC
Townsville,
Studios.
Australia, Assange has
Listen
always
to this
been on
episode on
living in
TuneIn
over 30 homes by the time he was in his mid-teens. Assange, along with his mother and half-brother, finally settled
Have you
down in
heard the
Melbourne.
most
His
unscripted,
introduction to hacking
unfiltered,
started
and
at 16.
unhinged sports
He was
show
given
in
a
the game?
Commodore 64,
On the Skip
which
and
he attached
Shannon
to a modem.
Undisputed
He
podcast,
attended the University
Skip
of Melbourne,
Bayless,
where he
Shannon
studied
Sharp, and
programming,
Jenny
physics,
Tapp
and
discuss
mathematics.
the
He
biggest
never
stories in the
graduated,
world of
but
sports.
that doesn't
Father
mean he didn't
Time
get an
is
education.
at least sort of
By
looking over
1991,
one shoulder
Assange
right
hacked
now.
into the Pentagon,
LeBron,
U.S.
you remember
Navy,
me?
and other
The one
branches of the
thing
U.S.
he would
government.
skip,
In
because, okay, they
1996,
cut
he
some
was caught
games
by the
last year. That
Australian
was
federal
10, 12
police and
games
charged with over
that he
30
averaged
counts of
25. That's
hacking
another
computer-related
250, 275
crimes.
points.
He didn't get
Skip
any
and
jail
Shannon
time,
on
but he was
TuneIn.
fined $2,100.
America's
I think the
pastime
first
is a big
taste of
deal.
what would come later
It's
was
also
hacking
big
into the
business.
program. And
Baseball
that really
Biz is the
sort of
podcast
foreshadowed
about
a
the
healthy
business of
skepticism
baseball,
of
covering
the use
everything
and
from
abuse
MLB
of
history and
technology by
operations
government.
to
That's
interviews
Vernon
with players,
Silver.
I'm a
agents,
reporter for
owners,
Bloomberg's
scouts,
investigations.
umpires, and
Assange's youth
beyond.
as a
We have the
hacker
regular
laid the
baseball
foundation
season.
for him
We
to start
get
WikiLeaks
all
in
involved with
2006.
everything with
But
the
what
World
is
Series.
WikiLeaks?
Thank goodness, it's the most
It's a
exciting thing you
website
have.
that
But
posts
then you say, what
unfiltered,
happens
usually
after that? Well,
classified documents.
Search Baseball
What
Biz
separates
in
it
one
from every
word
other
on
media
TuneIn
outlet
to
is that they
listen.
have no editorial hierarchy. With a
Gotta
publication
catch
like
a
the New York
flight?
Times, information comes in,
Long
they
road
take that
trip ahead?
information, package it, then disseminate it for the
Wi-Fi
public to see.
connection spotty?
WikiLeaks, however,
Make
cuts
sure
out the
you're
middleman.
never without something to listen to by offlining your podcasts on TuneIn. Just find your favorite podcast and tap the three dots to download the episode you want to hear. When you're off the grid, you'll find all your offline audio under your favorites.
Creator, and really, because he thinks of it as a journalistic enterprise, the editor.
You're working from home,
Every
right?
story starts with a
Why
source.
not make your background
Assange
listening more
has some
enjoyable with
unconventional
TuneIn
sources.
TuneIn Premium is your key to unlocking commercial-free news coverage from CNN, Fox News Radio, MSNBC, and more.
Now, let's turn back to politics. We're here.
Plus
That's
non-stop
Eli
music
Lake.
channels for every mood and activity.
And there is no source bigger for Assange than Chelsea Manning, who used to be known as
Not
U.S.
to mention
soldier
less
Bradley
ads on
Manning.
over
In
100,000 radio
2010, Manning
stations
provided
from around
Assange
the
and
world.
WikiLeaks
Search
with
Premium
hundreds of
to hear
thousands
it
of
for
these
yourself.
government documents.
Not
WikiLeaks
sure what
quietly
to
began
listen to
releasing
next?
the documents in
Well, here's this
February
week's
of
top
2010,
3 things to
then made
listen on
big
TuneIn.
headlines in April
Get
by
ready for a
posting what
fresh
is now
perspective
known
on the
as the
sports
collateral
world with
murder
First Take,
video.
Her Take, the new female-led spin-off
Come on,
of ESPN's First Take. Now that Joe Biden has been sworn in as America's 46th president, catch up on his first days in office with live, on-demand coverage from your favorite news source. Hear the latest and greatest hits coming out of Nashville with TuneIn's top station for country music,
They went on to
Country
post more
Roads.
than 90,000
Find these and more trending audio on the homepage of the TuneIn app.
390,000 documents
Break
known as
down
the
all the
Iraq
lines
War,
and matchups
and
in
a
college
quarter of a
basketball
million
with the
private
Hoopin' with
messages
Hoops
between
podcast.
diplomats called
From power
cable in
conferences
what
like
is now
the
known as
ACC,
cable.
Big Ten, and Pac-12
These leagues
to the
were
ones
met
you've
with
never heard
very
of.
real ethical
Greg
questions.
Hoops Peterson covers it all.
We've got a tremendous podcast for you. Unlike my normal podcast where I answer some Twitter questions, take a look at what
Then
all
Secretary of
transpired
State
yesterday
Hillary
and everything
Clinton
like
drove the
that.
point home
Well, this is the Saturday edition, and you guys know
Search Hoopin' with Hoops on TuneIn to listen.
The next time you're in the TuneIn app and playing your favorite station or podcast, just keep scrolling down the
Shortly
screen.
after
From
Cable
there,
Gate,
you
the
can
Swedish
quickly
government
revisit
issued
your
an
recent
arrest warrant
listening
for Assange
while
on
discovering
allegations of
personalized
rape
and
and
similar
molestation.
recommendations
He claimed
based
the
on your
allegations were
interests and
fabricated to
location.
get him
Listening to
extradited to the United
CNN,
States, a
MSNBC,
claim the
or
US
Fox
government
News Radio?
denied.
Scroll to see a
Either
schedule
way,
of upcoming
Assange's next
programs.
move was
Listening to today's
to seek
hits?
refuge
Scroll
in
to
the
see the
Ecuadorian
latest
embassy,
songs you
which
just
really
heard.
was the
Listening to a
beginning of
live
new
NHL
chapter
game?
in his
Scroll
life
to see
and
when
what
your
we're dealing
team's
with now,
next
which is him
matchup
being
is.
stuck in
Scroll
London.
and explore more
What
on
was supposed to
TuneIn.
be an office in an embassy is now Assange's self-imposed prison to this very day. But that doesn't mean he's slowed down. Since being trapped in the embassy, WikiLeaks has released files about Guantanamo Bay prisoners, Syrian political figures, and the draft of the Trans-Pacific Partnership. And then came the 2016 U.S. election.
Extra careful with things like burning yard trimming. Don't just walk away, or chances are you might be starting a wildfire.
Over the course of 68 days, WikiLeaks released 20,000 confidential Democratic National Committee emails. In terms of the presidential race, if you look right here, when Assange released the first batch of emails, Trump actually takes his first lead like New Jersey
Institute of Technology are fueling the innovation economy. And few people are better positioned to see what's on the horizon in New Jersey than physicist and state representative Andrew Zwicker.
How technology is transforming our financial
From the emails, we now know Hillary Clinton's campaign manager makes risotto, and also how the DNC squashed Bernie Sanders' campaign. One thing we don't know is who gave Assange the stolen emails in the first place.
Many leading Democrats say they suspect it was the Russians.
In an ever-growing
they released an analysis from a private
how do we turn urban
cybersecurity
centers
firm
into
that said it was
agricultural centers?
But Assange claims
vehicles is another one where we have some of the world's leading experts and how this will transform how those who
So this is where we stand today. The public still doesn't know who provided the emails to WikiLeaks. Meanwhile, Assange is still running WikiLeaks and still releasing documents. In March 2017, he started publishing documents from the CIA's Center for Cyber Intelligence called Vault 7.
NJIT.edu/research.
Finding and keeping our top secrets can't keep its own secrets.
24 hours a day.
As long as Assange has a connection to the world, no government secret will be too far from exposure.
This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
We're coming off the lows, but sort of sagging and flowing back further into the red. The equities slumped amid lingering concerns about problems created by volatile retail trading. Losses were limited earlier on optimism. Coronavirus vaccines will fuel economic growth. Treasury yields, gold, and oil are up. Let's look at those numbers. The S&P is down 0.7%, down 26. The Dow is down 0.7%, down 218. The Nasdaq's down 0.6%, down 85. The 10-year is down 12/30 seconds with a yield of 1.08%. West Texas Intermediate crude is up almost 1% at 52.84 a barrel. COMEX gold is up over 1% at 18.6040 an ounce. The dollar yen 104.81, the euro $1.2134, and the British pound $1.3712. GameStop paired an early sharp rally, but was still on track to get back much of yesterday's $11 billion blow after Robinhood Markets and other brokerages eased trading restrictions on the video game retailer. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett.
You're listening to Bloomberg Markets with Vonnie Quinn and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Very excited to have our next guest now. I'd like to welcome in Dr. Dan Skowronski, who is Chief Scientific Officer at Eli Lilly and Company. And Eli Lilly, of course, doing a lot of work on antibody therapies on COVID. So welcome, Dr. Dan, and thank you. First of all, explain to us where you're at when it comes to the antibody work.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be on today. We have a monoclonal antibody called bamlanivimab, which is a synthetic way of boosting a person's immune system. It's currently authorized by the FDA under emergency use, and it's available in many countries around the world for the early treatment of COVID-19. So these are patients who are diagnosed with COVID-19. They're still early in their disease course. They're not hospitalized, but they have risk factors such as age or obesity or hypertension or cardiovascular disease that would suggest they could have dangerous outcomes. And what we've shown here is that this drug can reduce the risk that they end up being hospitalized or worse.
So, Doctor, where, in terms of the United States, where are we with your drug here in the U.S., and what is your time frame for, really getting it fully out to the market?
Yeah, it's already widely available. Patients should know that, and doctors should know that. About 1 million doses have been shipped already. Most healthcare institutions have it, but it's still a little tricky for patients and physicians to find it. The U.S. government, who's in charge of distributing it, has created resources. One is called Combat COVID, so combatcovid.hhs.gov. If patients click on that, they can see infusion locator, which will actually show them near their house where they can go to get it. So again, it's for patients who have just gotten diagnosed with COVID and they're high risk and worried. This is a treatment option that is available to them.
So how does it work? Is it a one-time thing? Do they continue to go back for more? And is there any data on what happens if it doesn't work or if it works in a different way than you're anticipating?
Yeah, thank you. It's a one-time infusion. So the infusion now, as of today, we've just quickened it, so it only takes it can take as little as 16 minutes. In some circumstances, it could take more. But the patient is infused with this medicine just that one day for that amount of time.
When it debuted,
usually
the 4G wireless we have today allowed people for the first time
observe the
to hit
patient,
the
make sure they don't
road
have
and explore
any adverse events
only a smartphone
for up to an hour after they
When 5G
administer the drug,
arrives,
and
it could
then the
enable
patient goes
driverless
home.
cars to take us there as well.
5G
stands for
Well, position closed, as you can see, at 121.395. Just right here. Yeah. Well done. Good.
this were widely deployed, if all the patients that could
Bloomberg
benefit
Tech reporter Ian
got this, we could have 70% less people in hospitals. We also completely eliminated deaths.
What we're being told about
So
5G is that
the
really
placebo
for the first
arm,
time, we're going to see
unfortunately, 10 out of about 500 people died, which is
in
consistent with what we know about COVID.
5G could end up being 100 times faster than what we have now.
On the
speeds that
treatment
can
arm,
reach 20 gigabits per second.
Deaths.
In plain English, that means downloading a full-length HD
Imagine
movie
if we can
in a
reduce
second.
hospitalizations by 70%.
5G will also increase total bandwidth,
reduce
which we will need
significantly,
in order
eliminate
to accommodate the growing
even
Internet of Things.
the vast majority of
We're talking about the class of devices
we
like
could really
internet-connected
turn what is
refrigerators,
the
thermostats,
biggest
dog
public health
collars,
crisis
but
of our
5G
lifetime
will enable many,
into a disease
many
that's much more manageable. So I just see these monoclonal antibodies in combination with vaccines, which create immunity in advance of getting the disease. This gives you immunity that helps you treat the disease. That those two things together, we can really turn the corner. On
Doctor, do you have to be sick already to get this, or can you get it without being sick?
Lag time, known as latency.
Right now,
a network of driverless cars will need the speed of 5G
that's for
to
people
ping each
who
other
are
multiple
sick.
times per second.
We
to avoid
also
collisions.
last week
Near
disclosed
instantaneous
another
data
phase 3
transfers could
trial
allow
for
doctors
the same
to perform
drug, but
surgery
now
remotely
used in
with a
people who
robotic
aren't sick yet.
scalpel. So
We
how
went
will all this
into
work?
nursing
First,
homes.
you need to improve
You have a very
network
vulnerable
density.
population, and we went to nursing homes where they're starting to have an outbreak, and we tested to see whether we could use this prophylactically.
The idea is 5G will not only use the existing mobile spectrum,
very
but also tap into
reduction,
higher
80% reduction
waves.
for
Millimeter
nursing
waves
home
can carry more
residents
data, but only travel short
getting
distances.
sick.
This
So in
may
other words,
mean
giving
you'll see a
them in
lot more of
advance
these
of
base
illness
stations around
prevented
town.
many of
New
them
towers may
from
have as
getting
many as
sick.
100
And again,
antenna ports, compared
no
to about
deaths
a
of
dozen
people
on
who
4G
got the
cells.
treatment.
So when will we get
versus
5G?
a number
Getting
of deaths
5G
of
ready
people
is
who
expected to
unfortunately
cost
got placebo
providers
in this trial.
$275
So
billion
it can work in
over
that
7
scenario.
years in
We
the
have that
US
data,
alone.
which is exciting.
Look for the first
but that
5G
isn't yet
service to
authorized
pop
by the
up in
FDA.
big
We're
cities
taking that
sometime
forward
in
for their review
2019.
soon.
So, Doctor, I'm getting the sense that it's not fully in the marketplace, that there are some bottlenecks. Is that correct? Am I correct in inferring that? And what do we need? What do you need to do to get it fully distributed?
Yeah, thank you. There's it's distributed. It's out there on the shelves of hospitals and infusion centers and healthcare facilities around the country. There's a couple of misconceptions and a couple of bottlenecks that are slowing down patient use. The first is that patients and their doctors often don't know about it. It's relatively new, and information hasn't been fully disseminated. So we're trying to work with the federal government to make sure the word gets out in the right way. That's important because people, if they wait until they're really sick and hospitalized, this is no longer an appropriate treatment. So the window of intervention is still early, and that takes some thinking to say, okay, I have COVID-19, I may not feel awful yet, but I know I have these risk factors. So that's the first step, is awareness. The second is actually getting an infusion, which is something that happens all the time for cancer patients or patients with autoimmune diseases, but it's new for infectious diseases. And so hospitals and healthcare facilities have been setting up around the country
When people think of Vladimir Putin, they think of capital P, power, and that's exactly the impression he creates. Whether it's physical power, firing different weapons, riding in various James Bond-esque modes of transportation, or tossing hapless opponents in jail, or political power, ruling his own country with an iron fist, crushing his political opposition, or, most recently, being accused of meddling in foreign elections for his own benefit. This is how Vladimir Putin went from a poor, tough kid in Leningrad to a KGB spy to the very symbol of modern Russia.
Doctor, we're pretty much out of time, but can you give us a quick
Putin was born
idea
in
of the cost and
1952
whether it's
in
covered by
Leningrad,
insurance?
which is now St. Petersburg.
one
His
of
father was a
the,
factory
principles that
foreman
we
and his
follow
mother a homemaker.
in our
It
discussions
is
with the
widely
US
said that
government, we've asked
Putin's
that this should be
public-facing
free
tough guy
for
persona
patients. So
can
that
be
is
traced
the
back
cost.
to him getting
Zero
into fights
people
when
don't
he
have
was
to pay for
younger,
the
which
drug
paved the
itself.
way for him to take up judo.
Sometimes
After getting a
there's
law degree from
price to
Leningrad
pay
State
for
University,
the doctor seeing the
Putin
patient
joined
or
the
diagnosing
KGB
them or
Foreign
giving them an
Intelligence
infusion.
Service. He
All
spent
of that
16
should
years
be
in the
covered by-
KGB.
fully covered
When
by-
Putin
by
returned to
insurance
Russia,
or
he
the
began
government.
his political
So patients shouldn't be inhibited by
I think I might be running out to my nearest healthcare
That's the end
provider.
for sure.
Sounds like we should all be getting this.
I'm a little
Putin thrived in
All right,
subjects
Doctor. Thank you so
administration
much for
because
joining us, Dr. Dan Skoronsky. He's Chief Scientific Officer for Eli Lilly and Company, talking to us about one of their therapeutics that has proven to be extraordinarily effective. And Bonnie, it just seems like, why wouldn't you?
And those people soon brought
Yeah, I mean, I guess you'd have to be a little bit brave to go for it, but at the same time, it doesn't sound like there's much of a downside.
Yeah, so certainly I guess, for those folks that do test positive, here is a great treatment for them. So that's good news. We'll have more coming up.
Around this time, Yeltsin and the people around him, the so-called
Gotta catch a flight?
decided that Putin would become Yeltsin's
Long
successor.
road trip ahead?
Then this happened.
Wi-Fi connection spotty? Make sure you're never without something to listen to by offlining your podcasts on TuneIn. Just find your favorite podcast and tap the 3 dots to download the episode you want to hear. When you're off the grid, you'll find all your offline audio under your favorites.
And it worked.
Your work routine has
3 months
changed.
later, Yeltsin resigned. And on his way out,
Why not change up your listening routine? With TuneIn Premium, Premium unlocks commercial-free news and music channels.
So Putin took over as president. 3 months
Plus,
after
less
that,
ads
won his
on
first
100,000
election. But just
radio
because
stations
Putin
from
won
around the world.
presidency, that didn't mean
Real music. That's what I listen to.
You're always playing one of my favorite songs, Go Country 105.
Hear it for yourself with a free trial.
Ever wonder what life is really like as a professional hockey player? On the Spit and Chicklets podcast, NHL veterans Ryan Whitney and Paul Bissonnette join Barstool sports writer Rear Admiral to share stories from their playing days while bringing their outspoken brand of commentary to the day's top headlines.
That cameo request turned into an SNL skit. It's crazy.
Thinking of you studying, I just picture 2 pit bulls barking at each other.
Search Spit and Chicklets on TuneIn to listen.
That's when Putin gave the oligarchs a choice. Putin's
This
way
week on the
or
New Yorker
the
Radio
highway.
Hour, I'll talk with staff writers Jane Mayer and Evan Osnos about the balance of power in Washington. The Democrats' razor-thin control of Congress, the Republican infighting over the insurrection, and the ambitious first 100 days plan
once was
of
Russia's
President
richest
Biden.
person worth
That's the New Yorker
$15
Radio
billion,
Hour
but he
from
ran afoul
WNYC
of President
Studio.
Vladimir Putin and spent a
Listen to
decade
this episode
in
on
prison.
TuneIn.
Domestic power consolidated, Putin focused on restoring Russia's global influence.
Capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Markets with Bonnie Quinn and Paul Sweeney.
How much volatility ascribed to the Robin Hood effect?
Talk to us about Biden's tax plan.
We're getting doses of good news on the vaccine front.
When do you anticipate we'll see the market pricing in more
Annexation
inflation?
and invasion, as well as oil, gas, and
from
trade.
Bloomberg experts.
It's still going to take a very long time to recover from the real economy side of things. The Fed is really showing that they're doing whatever it takes.
Dmitry Medvedev stepped in as president.
see a plan forward to accelerate vaccine
Really?
distribution.
This is really hitting industrial America, and it's a major crisis.
This is Bloomberg Markets with Bonnie Quinn and Paul Sweeney.
It was actually a period of
Bloomberg Radio.
cooperation between Russia
Another
and the US
exciting
that
interview
benefited
coming
both
up. It
countries
is
during
all
Medvedev's
treatments
presidency.
and vaccines today. Novavax CEO Stan Erck is going to join in just a few moments. First, we're going to get a Bloomberg Business Flash, the latest state of the market now with Greg Jarrett.
Here for you, Bonnie. Equities are down amid lingering concerns about all those difficulties created by volatile retail trading. Treasury yields, gold, and oil all up on optimism coronavirus vaccines will fuel economic growth. Let me find out what the markets are doing right now. The S&P is down 0.5%, down 20. The Dow's down 0.6%, down
won by a huge
196.
margin.
The Nasdaq
Set
is down
about crushing the
4%, down
protest
50.
movement immediately.
The 10-year is right now
Over the
down
next few
12 30
years,
seconds.
Russia's
yield of
economy
1.0.
tumbled. Putin annexed Crimea,
West Texas
leading to
Intermediate's up
sanctions.
0.6%
The price
off
of
earlier
oil fell
highs.
drastically.
At 52.68 a
The
barrel,
ruble hit
COMEX
the new
gold's up
low,
over 1%.
and America played
at
down
18.60
Russia's
an ounce.
with Obama calling
the dollar
Russia
yen
a
104.69.
Despite
the euro
all that,
$1.21.52,
Putin's approval rating remained
and the British pound $1.37.34. Not a lot of conversation is going on about the effects of the retail trade on the silver commodity. Silver is today up 2.7%
Trump
at
exhibits tolerance towards
$27.20
Putin's actions and
an
his
ounce.
Crimea.
Wasn't
Similar
that long
views
ago,
on
it was
NATO
trading
and
for
sanctions.
$14 to $16 an ounce. That
Even
is
though
a
Putin
Bloomberg
denies
business
any
flash.
wrongdoing,
Bloomberg market is underway.
The U.S. has accused Russia of being behind the
Yes,
leaking
indeed.
of
And
20,000
Paul, we are
Democratic
waiting for the
National
Novavax
Committee
CEO to
which
come
many
on.
say
It's going to be a
helped Trump
fascinating
beat Hillary
conversation.
Clinton
These
in the
vaccines are coming
presidential
thick and fast
election,
now.
which leaves us
They
here
are. I'm looking
with
at
the
Novavax
possibility
stock
of a
here. It's up
President Putin until
64% today to
positioning Russia to be the world power
$220, up about
he always imagined
97% year to date, and over trailing 12 months, close to 2,800% for the stock. So some good news coming out of a study out of the UK, Vonnie. And again, as you mentioned, we've got the Johnson & Johnson. We just heard from the chief scientific officer from Eli Lilly about their therapeutics. So as you mentioned, good news coming from science. And now it's up to the supply chain experts to get these therapeutics and vaccines into the arms as quickly as possible.
Right. This, as we hear, UK viruses, new viruses rose by 29,079. The 7-day average is 28,584. So those viruses are, still just ravaging whole countries. And the more the merrier when it comes to vaccines and, treatments.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's switch back quickly to kind of the topic of the day, which is GameStop and all these other retail traded stocks that are really roiling markets, really getting the attention of not just investors and market participants, but also regulators. We are fortunate to welcome Larry Tabb. He's head of market structure for Bloomberg Intelligence, former CEO and founder of the Tabb Group. Before that, Lehman Brothers. He has been studying exchanges and how securities trade for a long time. There's absolutely nobody better to talk to about this. Larry, thanks for coming on and joining us here. I'd love to get your thoughts about the actions we saw from Robinhood and some of the other electronic platforms yesterday that chose to kind of halt some types of trading in these securities that really, at the end of the day, yesterday, cost those retail investors dearly.
Yeah, the issue there is nothing really around Robinhood per se or trying to penalize the investors. The issue has more to do with clearing and having enough regulatory capital and clearing capital to give to the DTCC, which is the clearinghouse, to ensure that all their trades can settle.
Yeah, I mean...
So what happened...
Sorry? Mm-hmm. Continue.
No, go.
Well, you were just going to explain what happens. Sorry, Larry.
Yeah, so what happens is it takes 2 days for trades to settle, and in those 2 days, companies or brokerages or can go out of business. And the problem is if there's not a clearinghouse in the middle, if someone goes out of business, then you don't get paid for the trades, and then because you don't get paid for your trades, you default, and then your clients have problems, and these things can cascade. And so the clearinghouse stands in the middle, becomes the central counterparty for all of these entities, and to ensure that these trades clear smoothly, they collect capital. And the challenge is, most stocks don't vary. The price doesn't vary that much, and they stay somewhere near their intrinsic value. The
Jack Ma is Asia's richest man and most recognizable business tycoon.
Nobody knows what the right value
He's the chairman of Alibaba, China's e-commerce giant and one of the 10 largest companies in the world.
And if you
Yet
do a
he
large
still wants
percentage
more.
of them, we know where we're going. Then the risk to the clearinghouse and
Big words from the man some call Asia's Jeff Bezos.
Greater. So they just
He's
need more
confident,
capital to
he's
ensure that
charismatic,
everyone can
he's
sell
definitely
their
not the average
transactions.
CEO.
How long could it go on for? I mean, obviously Robinhood, Schwab, TD, they're all putting in
This
sort of
is
restrictions
how a
at this point. The latest
went from the
is Schwab
classroom
and TD
to being
banning
one of the most
naked
influential
call options,
multi-billionaires in the world.
banning selling those naked call options. But we know that Robinhood needed to sort of draw
Ma
down
was born
on
in
credit
China's
lines.
southeastern city, Hangzhou,
At what
in
point
1964.
will they be in trouble?
His parents were traditional musician storytellers.
Well, it shouldn't be.
As a teenager, he started to learn English from foreign tourists after China opened up in the late 1970s.
And then for 9 years, Jack Ma hung around outside the Hangzhou Hotel, which is now called the Shangri-La. He would get up at 5 a.m. to talk to travelers.
That's Bloomberg technology reporter Lulu
These
Chen.
credit extensions
And
shouldn't
I
be for
cover
too
China
long, but it really
Internet for
depends
Bloomberg.
on how many orders they get
Ma
for
failed
today, for
China's
tomorrow,
National
and for
University
tomorrow, for
entrance
the next
exam
day,
twice
for the
before
next
being
day, for the day
admitted
after
to
that.
local
So as
teachers
long
college.
as
He graduated in
the
1988.
price of these stocks is
He applied for 30 jobs and got rejected,
and highly
including
valued,
from the fast food giant
and they're doing a
KFC.
lot of volume in those names. They're going to need that capital pool. So if it was just a one-day thing, it would only be for a couple of days. But given that this volume
Then Ma got a job at a local university and taught English there for about 5 years, earning just $15 a month.
So, Larry, on
On the
social
side,
media,
he
a lot
started
of these day
translation
traders, these
company with
Redditors
several
are just
friends.
livid
During a
with
company trip
the
to the
Robin
US
Hoods
in
and the other
1995,
trading
Ma had his
platforms.
first
Are you
encounter with the
suggesting, I'm thinking about
internet at a
David
friend's
Portnoy
place
of
in
Barstool
Seattle.
Sports, he's probably the most visible. Are you suggesting that their ire is misplaced, that it really wasn't necessarily the platforms per se, but it was just kind of the DTCC and the margin requirements and that type of thing?
You mean a guy who runs, traditional
So he
betting
searched for the word
sites,
China instead and still
because he
couldn't
really
find
doesn't
anything.
understand
And that
how
got him
trades
thinking.
get settled
He wanted to
cleared.
build something that would put China on the world's map.
He started China Pages, a Yellow Pages-like website, but it didn't take off.
For 40
Then Ma
years,
joined a government
still
agency in
learning it.
Beijing to help set up the website.
There are...
Well, I'm placing new order to sell short at 121.44 on euro. Yeah, guys. Okay. Right. Okay. Order placed. Sell short at 121.44. And it moved lower. Probably this time will not build. 121.44. Will I be able to execute it? See? Well, if it will move lower, then won't be much point to hold this order. That's why I'm waiting to see what's going to happen with this candle. Because next minute will be crucial, yeah? If it go up, I'll hold it. If it will go down, I'll remove my order. Let's see. Yeah, it started moving down, and unfortunately, order to sell short removed. Okay, let's wait for another time.
Coming up, he's sitting down with Guy Johnson to talk about Novavax, their vaccine. That's coming up, and we're going to go to Guy Johnson.
After achieving dominance in the business of e-commerce in China, Alibaba has been building an internet empire worth $472 billion.
Let's talk about what is happening with Novavax. The company coming out today detailing the trials that it has run thus far, the UK, South Africa. We have got efficacy data there, but we're still waiting for data out of the United States as well. Joining us now, both on Bloomberg Television and Radio Stan, Novavax's CEO. Stan, thanks for your time today. Really appreciate the data you provided to the market. The market's certainly responding very positively to it. Your stock up really quite sharply. The question a lot of people are asking this morning is, when can you apply for emergency use authorization in the United States? Can you go with the data you've got thus far, or do you have to wait for the further study that is being conducted stateside?
Sector so early. Note that this is a person who has no coding skills at all. He's a natural showman and a gifted public speaker and really able to convince others to believe in his vision.
We've got the one that was reported on today, or yesterday as well, with 15,000 people
strong competition at home and abroad.
That study, it turns out, is an interim study. Got great results. We got 96% efficacy against the COVID-19 strain that circulates in the globe. And they have a mutant strain there called the UK mutant and single mutant, and we got 86% efficacy there. So even against a drifted strain, we got good data. We're expecting. So that trial that's interim data. We have to complete the trial, which means we have to, another 2 or 3 weeks, collect enough cases to get past 100 cases. And we'll take those data and use those data to file for regulatory approval in the UK through the MHRA. And what we're hoping, and we're talking with the FDA, we're talking with MHRA in UK, we're talking with EMA in Europe, and we're hoping that we can take that data package to the FDA and have them evaluate our vaccine based upon the UK data while we're running a phase 3 trial in the U.S. And the U.S. trial is running very well. We're targeting 30,000 people. We started a month ago, and we've gotten 16,500 people as of yesterday. And we expect to finish accruing that trial by the beginning or middle of February. And then we'll count cases and get data. But it will pace the UK data. And so we're hoping is that while we're finishing up that trial, we can go to the FDA and ask for EUA approval.
Stan, have you talked to the FDA? Are they cool with that timeline, or would they be on board with that?
We are talking to them, and we don't have a definitive answer yet. They're very familiar with what we're doing, and so then actually, to be honest, all of the agencies have been very informative and flexible, and it's all data driven, and we just got our data yesterday, and so we will have continued conversations with all the agencies.
Stan, as you currently see things, when do you think the first Novavax shots will go into somebody's arm, and where do you think that will be?
I think the first shot will be in the UK. I think that the first approval will be in the UK, and I think it will go into somebody's arm hopefully in early April.
Can we talk a little bit about the data that you know so far? What was confusing was the lower efficacy in HIV-positive patients in South Africa. J&J didn't seem to report anything like that. Can you walk us through the why behind that?
Well, we don't really know. It's the why is probably just because it's small numbers. Now, we had 4,500 people in the global trial, and only 150 were recorded in the HIV trial. We had 6 cases. We had 4 cases. It turns out we had 4 cases in the vaccine group and 2 cases in the placebo group. And one number changes would have changed things from negative efficacy to plus efficacy.
Saying colleges.
So nobody puts any
he's a staunch supporter of the free press.
Particular result.
He bankrolled a
the result that we got was a 92% of the patients of the subjects was a 60% efficacy. So
he's an immigrant libertarian.
As we collect more data and finish
of Donald
collecting
Trump
over
in
time,
all of Silicon
we may
Valley.
sort that out, but it's not clear.
Crazy, and it's not.
Stan, are you already working
This is the story of how an openly gay, immigrant genius, libertarian, billionaire went from contrarian to Silicon Valley's biggest Trump supporter.
We are. Our technology is
Thiel was born
very
in October
flexible,
11,
allows us to do that. All we're doing
Frankfurt, West
is we're
Germany,
making
to Suzanne and Klaus
making a
Thiel.
protein.
Peter's family emigrated to Cleveland, Ohio when he was
that
1.
forms
Ayn Rand
folds into
devotee
a
during his
particle
youth. Thiel attended
and
Stanford
formulated it
University
with an
majoring in
adjuvant, which is a
philosophy.
very important, safe immune stimulant. And we made the one we're using to match what has been circulating for the last year. And as you can see, it works very well.
He and his Stanford friends made their first big splash in tech with
it
PayPal.
mutates
After
a little
selling
bit,
to eBay for
we may lose a little
$1.5
bit of
billion,
efficacy, and when
they
it
would
mutates
become known
more,
as the PayPal Mafia.
then we may
For
have to
each
decide to make it a
incredible
new strain. So we can make that strain
after PayPal.
and
For Thiel,
we have 2
that
choices.
began
One
with
is
an
we
early,
can substitute
$500,000
the new strain for the old strain and just turn the manufacturing process back on. It's not very difficult to do that. Or alternatively, and this may be the preferred method,
but Thiel
is
was
to have a
just getting
bivalent
started
vaccine
with
like we do with flu.
He went on to make a
Flu, we
whole
have 4
bunch of
strains
wildly successful
to address
investments.
exactly the problem that we're seeing in coronavirus right now. So the coronavirus may turn into very similar to a flu issue.
Stan, this might feel a little wonky, but
incredibly controversial
can the
secret data
vaccines get
mining
distributed
startup he
enough
founded
to
with his
stop more
colleagues from
mutations,
PayPal.
or
It connects
will the
data
virus
silos
mutate
and then allows
faster than
non-technical
vaccines
people
can get
to search
out?
that
What's an
information
implication
for
for that?
patterns. Data like
It's a good question that I don't think anybody knows the answer to yet. We try to make, we all work to make.
Palantir doesn't talk much about how they collect this
started
data,
flu
who has
with,
access to it,
bivalent
what they do with
and
it.
trivalent.
But they have contracts
a decade
with
ago, we switched to quadrivalent. We can do that with COVID, and we just don't.
Several
we
other
just have to wait and see.
agencies.
It's not known.
It's the richest company you've never heard of.
Alex and I talked to a bunch of CEOs that are doing what you're doing over the last few days, Stan. And one of the things that has stood out from those conversations is there is an expectation that this is going to become like the flu. That we will be maybe even combining COVID-19 vaccines with the flu vaccine, the flu shot that we all get every year. Do you see that as being likely as well?
We don't. We not only see it as being likely, we're working on it. So our company is vaccines only, and we happen to be experts at respiratory vaccines. We make a flu vaccine that we just 9 months ago we unblinded
but he also secretly spent tens of millions of dollars bankrolling a lawsuit filed by Hulk Hogan over the publication of a sex tape and bankrupting the independently run Gawker Media. Why did he do this? Because in 2007, one of Gawker Media's blogs, Value outed him as gay. With the lawsuit,
we expected to do the same for coronavirus, and we can combine coronavirus, flu, and we also have an RSV vaccine. So the three major causes of respiratory illness on a seasonal basis.
His endorsement
we think we can have a great combination vaccine.
Some of the news today was the European Union's export ban on vaccines. How does that affect you? What do you think about that? It seems like a vaccine nationalism front and center.
No matter how crazy this election
it is what we worried about a year ago, and that's why we established 8 different manufacturing facilities and partnerships in 7 different countries. We're in India,
donating $1.25 million to Trump and his associated super PACs in October.
There's a lot of flexibility with what
we do. He didn't just help Trump financially.
Stan, have you gone back over your contracts as a result of the trouble that AstraZeneca is having?
Convention.
I'm not a politician, but neither
is
Donald
Trump. Have we gone back over our contracts?
He is a builder, and it's time to rebuild
And
America.
when Trump was finally elected, Thiel was given the reins
with
to
AstraZeneca
enormous amount
and the problems that it's having with the EU in terms of who gets the shots first. Have you looked at your contracts? Have you looked at the language within them? Are you confident that you're okay?
Well, we will be. We have not signed a contract with the EU yet. We're negotiating a contract with the EU.
But it turns out,
do you think you will change the way you approach that contract as a result of what's happening?
Yes, we will pay a lot of attention to what's going on right now.
It was reported that Thiel was unhappy with the direction of Trump's presidency. Ever since, he's been mocked, making no public appearances, no statements, and staying out of the spotlight altogether. Although there have been suggestions that Trump could tap Thiel for a top intelligence post or ambassadorship, there's no indication he'd accept.
We'll make provisions for that.
So how does that work? I mean, if you have a delay in one plant, it doesn't have to be in Europe, but any plant. If you have a delay in one plant,
whether Thiel takes a new position or simply continues as a board director at Facebook and Palantir, at just 50 years old, he's primed to wield some serious influence in technology and politics for decades
You're right. We haven't, and that's something that we are looking to. We're looking to try to have enough capacity that we have flexibility to, if we miss making a batch in one particular plant, we can provide product from another. It's not trivial because there are a lot of regulatory issues. If you get regulatory approval in Europe for a particular plant, you can't automatically switch a product from India to Europe, for instance. So it's complicated.
Stan, if we delay certain regions in providing vaccines for them, what is the risk there? Israel's miles ahead. The UK's doing okay. Europe is behind. There are parts of the emerging markets that really haven't had any major vaccination programs underway at this point. How does that staggered rollout, do you think, affect the way that this pandemic is going to progress?
Well, this is why we have the strategy that we do, and we form partnerships with people. We believe that the best way to solve the pandemic issue is to have global production and distribution of our vaccine. And that's why we partnered with the Serum Institute, for instance, of India. And they have promised to make, we have the capacity without serum of making about 1 billion doses. They have the capacity to make 1 billion plus doses. They are the world's expert in distributing vaccines in the 92 low-income countries. So we can't. We didn't know how, and so we partnered with them, and so they will work with Gavi, for instance, which is the Global Alliance for Vaccines, to distribute and get registered, 1 billion doses for low and middle income countries, and we'll take the opposite part of the population, and we'll work together to get the vaccine at the same time, because this is not a U.S. problem. Solving the U.S. problem is not going to solve the pandemic issue. It's got to be everywhere, and so that's what we're working to do.
Yeah, no kidding. Speaking of emerging markets, I just wanted to get your take on, do you have any data on the Brazil variant and the reaction to the vaccine and how that might affect the U.S. trials, since we now have that variant here?
Right. We don't. Obviously, to the extent that those people in the trial have the Brazilian variant, we'll get data on that, but we don't now have data on that. So what we have, I think we're pretty remarkable that we're the first company to have efficacy data against 3 circulating strains, but we don't have Brazil yet.
Stan, we really appreciate talking to you. Thank you so much, and we appreciate all the hard work that you're doing as well. Thank you very much. Come back and talk to us as this continues. Stan Erck, Novavax CEO, and thank you for joining Bloomberg Television and radio audience as well.
And our thanks to Alex Steele of Bloomberg TV for bringing us that interview along with Guy Johnson, Novavax CEO Stan Erck, and basically great news there. Novavax, of course, working on respiratory vaccines in general. Erck talking about the company having efficacy data on 3 strains of coronavirus and also working on a combined coronavirus, flu, and maybe even other seasonal diseases type of vaccine. They're also negotiating contracts right now and want to be as transparent as possible about what potential production forecasts they have. Let's bring in Dr. Lauren Sauer, who knows an awful lot more about all of these various vaccines than we do. Lauren Sauer, of course, Professor of Emergency Medicine at Johns Hopkins University. Dr. Sauer, talk to us a little bit about the Novavax vaccine before we get on to the J&J vaccine and others. What are you hearing about it, and when are you anticipating using it?
US-sponsored plan secured pledges
I think everyone is very excited to hear these data from Novavax, and the efficacy of 89% is exciting from that phase 3 trial in Britain. I think also, even though the data from how it's looking on the South Africa variant is disappointing to see, it is still promising that they could immediately take a look at these results and analyze them, and that means that they can start to get to work immediately on things like a booster, like we're seeing from Moderna, for example. So, this vaccine has the potential to be just another really strong tool in our toolkit, and I think we're all really excited to see all of these vaccines that are coming out so far have this high level of efficacy, right? So the Johnson & Johnson one is a little bit lower, but Novavax is another one coming in with really, really high efficacy.
Without the U.S. commitment to emissions reduction, other countries may join.
So if that's the case, then, can we move up our timeline for when we anticipate everybody who wants a vaccine will get vaccinated, do you think?
I think the more vaccines come online, the shorter that timeline gets, right? So at least on the first half, which is getting vaccine to the sites that can give them. And so it is exciting to see more and more of these vaccines showing efficacy. The challenge will come when we have vaccines with different efficacy, different schedules of events. So like, I believe Johnson & Johnson is one of the ones with only a single shot. Novavax is another 2-shot vaccine. The windows for when you give those is a little challenging to navigate for these distributed healthcare systems that are putting their own systems in place to give them. So it'll move up the timeline of getting vaccine created and pushed to the sites that are giving it, but then we have a lot of work to do on making sure those distribution, systems actually work to get vaccine into people's arms, and that we have a line of people who are willing and ready to take them, because that is another huge challenge that we continue to see, right? So we know we have vaccine hesitancy issues. We know we have concerns among populations who aren't as willing to step up and get vaccinated immediately. So we have a lot of work to do to, even here, particularly here in the U.S., to regain people's trust in this healthcare system and this public health system, that what we're creating is not only effective, but also safe and scientifically sound.
So, Professor, we had this chief scientific officer from Eli Lilly on just earlier talking about one of their new therapeutics that is proven to reduce hospitalizations by about 70%. Talk to us about treating COVID right now. Where are we in treating people when they come through your doors?
Yeah, I think actually treatment is a place where we have a lot more work to do. We are seeing, potentially positive results in a lot of these repurposed drug studies, but we have a lot of work in the treatment space. And I think a big piece of that is because of, this huge push towards focus on outpatient treatments like monoclonal antibodies and the vaccines. A ton of our R&D efforts went to vaccines. As you can see, it has paid off quite well. We have some really incredible products coming down the pipe, but we have a lot of work in the therapeutic space left to do. I think anything that targets reducing hospitalizations, reducing severity of disease, and reducing these bad outcomes that we continue to see in our sickest patient populations is going to be critical over the next year or so. And also therapeutics that keep people out of the hospital. A lot of work is being done here in those, monoclonal antibodies, for example. But we want to grow our toolkit on the therapeutic side just as fast as we're growing it on the vaccine side. We're getting better at sort of developing the standard of care for these patients. So just how we treat them, how we manage them, what we're looking for in their hospital stay or even in their outpatient setting is definitely getting better. And we're seeing, shorter lengths of stay in a lot of these patients because of that probably. But we also need to work on our therapeutics in a very, very big way.
But Dr. Dan Skarbonsky, who we were speaking with, who is the Chief Scientific Officer at Eli Lilly, sort of made it sound almost like we should all be running out to get this 16-minute dose of monoclonal antibodies because they're using them already in nursing homes in certain places, and it shows great efficacy of fighting the disease if you do get it.
My name is Matt Dilling. I'm the founder
would you be able
of
to agree with a statement like that?
And we manufacture, produce, and restore neon
at the
works
Eli
of
Lilly
art
data,
and
so
design.
I'd have to see what their studies showed. I think, the way the studies are done.
Origins of the creative content of a lot of the work at Lightbright comes from a variety of sources. Sometimes people come with a napkin sketch, some people come with an Adobe Illustrator file, and we have a whole design team, and then we kind of work together to help create layouts of what it might look like.
There may be other parts in different patient populations, if you extrapolate, that might
and that paper template actually becomes our guide for
not be efficacious or might cause public health challenges in administration that inappropriately allocates
the office into the glass shop.
So we have to be careful about the level to which we generalize with these therapeutic trials. And I think if the data suggests that Eli Lilly's mAb is something that should be broadly given, then we need to scale up a trial that really evaluates that in a scientific
The torches heat the glass well in excess of 1,000 degrees in order for it to get
we have data to support that, and then we put the resources there. But we can't just generalize simply because
the glass tubing
the CEO tells us to.
One of our chandeliers.
Hey, Lauren, thank you so much once again. We always appreciate your thoughts and insight here as we try to get smarter here about the virus, about therapeutics and vaccines. Lauren Sauer, Associate Professor of Emergency Medicine at the Johns Hopkins School of Medicine, joining us on the phone from Baltimore. We should know that the Bloomberg School of Public Health is supported by Michael R. Bloomberg, founder of Bloomberg LP, Bloomberg Philanthropies, and this radio operation. Right now, let's head to Greg Jarrett, get a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All were sponsored by Commonwealth, supporting more than 2,000 independent financial advisors with the solutions they need to grow a thriving business. Commonwealth, go where you grow. Visit Commonwealth.com to learn more. Stocks are slumping amid lingering concerns about the problems created by volatile retail trading. Treasury yields, gold, and oil are up on optimism about vaccines and things like that. Let's check the numbers now, as long as we're here. The S&P 500 is down 1.3%, down 50. A leg down for the Dow, down 1.4%, down 418. The Nasdaq's down 1.3%, down 173. The 10-year's down 830 seconds. The yield 1.074%. West Texas Intermediate crude's now up 0.2% at 52.42 a barrel. COMEX gold is up 1% at 18.59 even per ounce. The dollar yen 104.69. The euro $1.2137. The British pound $1.37.17. U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission facing intense pressure to respond to the recent mania in the stock market, says it's seeking to identify potential misconduct and will scrutinize brokerage decisions to halt buying that triggered a retail investor revolt.
Floating is a similar experience to meditation,
I'm Greg
psychedelics.
Now on Bloomberg Markets, munis and focus.
And it is time for Munis in Focus, our weekly look at the municipal market, and we are excited to be doing that once again. And we have Eric Kazatsky with us. We'll get to that in a moment, but I do want to point out that we're also waiting for Janet Yellen's briefing to the administration. They are getting briefed right now, and we'll be able to bring you some comments in a few moments. This Focus on Munis is brought to you by Build American Mutual. When the market is volatile, BAM provides stability. BAM ensures municipal bonds deliver default protection, value preservation, and a durable rating. Ask your broker about BAM-inspired municipal bonds. Eric, gotta ask you, you would have thought that this part of the market would be completely isolated from everything else that was going on this week, but did we see any ripples in the muni space because of retail investors getting involved in stocks that were sold quite short?
And working with it, and I just continue to experience different things.
We like to keep it steady and just keep it on the ride. Look, we're a long-only market. There's no natural way to short, so there's really never going to be an investor revolt.
Once the neon tube is completed, we have to hook it up to our manifold for bombarding.
And
the manifold is open, the vacuum is drawn.
On the
we check the tube for leaks with our Tesla coil.
We actually, this week, had the largest.
We close the tube back off, and we heat it up using a very large, powerful transformer.
And keeping on the theme that we hit on
As the tube is heated up, it releases anything that's not inert inside the tube, and we evacuate that out. We introduce the gas into it.
Talk to us about valuations here, Eric. Kind of give us a sense where we are historically here, because every week or every other week that we talk to you and Joe Misek, we always hear about munis going higher, inflows at record levels. Are we in valuation?
Different gases, when electrified, emit different wavelengths of light. Neon gas is this very bright orange, fiery red color. Argon gas creates a very intense blue. But that light output that is produced can then be expressed in a different wavelength by coating the inside of the tubes with a phosphor coating that takes that one wavelength of light and emits a different wavelength. We bring it over to the aging table, where we hook it up to an aging transformer and allow it to settle, age the gas in that we've introduced to it. And there's always a stray particle of something left inside the tube. But that time that the oxide coating can act to scrub whatever is left inside the tube,
right now,
while things are being settled.
We only have data going back to 1980, and 30-year muni treasury ratios are at the lowest since then. So we're certainly
once the tubes are aged in, we move on to our process of assembling two halves of the fixture together in a jig, gluing out the center of the fixture to its spindle.
We've had quite a bit of volatility in the treasury space. We went below 1% for a second there, and we're back up at 107.23 this week. Does that have knock-on implications for the muni space at all?
Well, sure. I mean, obviously, we're going to, follow along directionally, but on a lag.
Part of what we love about what we do here is that we try and put out into the world the kind of things that we'd like to see. I still am surprised when it lights up. I'm still excited when I get to see it illuminated. There's an ineffable quality.
Less fluid market in the sense that things are adjusted by hand a lot of times. And it really is, as big as our market is, it's still sort of a
what is surrounding us in the cosmos.
So where do you see value maybe in a municipal bond market? You said there's pockets of value. Where are you seeing that right now?
Single A higher ed, single A hospitals. Look, I mean, we had a couple good news items on vaccines. So, if I'm looking in the healthcare space, I'm saying to myself, okay, we have a bunch of different vaccine options that are hopefully going to keep people out of ICU beds. that are hopefully going to allow hospitals to get back to doing what they do, which is higher acuity caseloads and getting those operating margins back up. So again, like that plays into a recovery story. Also with airports, people getting out and traveling again. I think the demand is there, that spring is really coiled and sort of set to unload when we sort of get critical mass on vaccination. So you're going to see those TSA numbers for airplane traffic go back up.
Are we going to see jump conditions and prices when we finally get, the go-ahead that most of the country is vaccinated, or that enough of the country is vaccinated that we can do all of this without being fearful?
I mean, are we going to see a jump in prices? I think you'll see the steady continuation of price appreciation in the municipal space. But I think there's going to come a time that if continued flows come in and rates are held in check like they are, the argument at some point is going to be, why am I paying this much money for a tax-exempt vehicle when I could literally slip into Treasury or buy corporate bonds and be better off and still pay the taxes? And, I really thought a couple of times last year we were at that inflection point, but money continues to come into the space. So, I've been proven wrong. I think some things to keep an eye on are latest bill introduced by the House to repeal the cap on salt. Paul, I know that's great for you as a New Jersey homeowner. And I think, it'll be interesting to see how that impacts demand in high-tax states like New York and California, because we did see a spike after that cap was put in place as homeowners in both of those areas were looking for ways to shield income. If that cap is, taken away, will it reduce demand in those states? Something to watch out for.
Yeah. But presumably, that might be offset, Eric. I guess the concern for some investors is by just higher income taxes in general from a Biden administration. How are investors in your market thinking about that?
Look, it's not just higher taxes from a Biden administration. It's higher taxes from the Cuomo administration if you're living in New York, right? And they haven't been shy about coming out and saying that that's certainly on their mind and something that they're looking to, raise revenues. And that's one of the ways they can go about it. So, yes, absolutely. You take one hand and you take away with the other. So that's something to obviously keep an eye on. And nothing is set in stone right now. I think we'll have a little bit more clarity once we see sort of what the relief bill is going to look like and ultimately how they're going to pay for it all.
Institutional investors that are into muni bonds, which would be most, I guess, that to some extent, do they at all liquidate any of these positions because they may have been
it's a bit like an addiction.
Impacted by retail, or they may want to start putting on some hedges in case retail gets into their portfolio? Is there any kind of ripple effect at all?
Time, and as soon as it's done, I
wish we were as sexy as to say that we had a way.
No, not looking for something that isn't there.
Spend cycles is something I've been thinking about ever since I started cycling in my late teens.
At all. I mean, look,
we want bikes that ultimately you really enjoy riding.
What that says to me is that as muni valuations,
there's never a bike that's the same. There's always a slight change, and as we build them individually as well, they have the marks of a bike that's built by hand.
Inventory at those price levels. And
most people I know cycle have an idea of their dream bicycle. And it may be an evolving idea you've had in your head. We've worked with a lot of people that have come to us with sketches and scrapbooks. It's really, really nice to build something that's just one-off and unique.
We're going to see depressed dealer inventory.
So
I think a lot of people
are we seeing new issuance? Or just give us a sense about new issuance over the last 6 months, Eric. I would think municipalities would be rushing out to raise capital, refinance at these historic low rates. What are we seeing?
Architecture and the simplicity
right now we're down 20% year over year.
It's really hard to achieve.
Look, I mean,
and with some of our bikes, they may look very simple, but I think people should not underestimate the time and effort that goes into designing products.
Eric, I hope you don't mind, but we're going to ask you to hold that thought and bring it back to us another time, because we do want to get now to President Biden and Vice President Harris. They're receiving an economic briefing with Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen in the Oval Office, as well as Jared Bernstein from the Council of Economic Advisors.
With their tubing, we can now put a badge on our bikes saying manufacturer Reynolds, which is a sort of thing as a kid I just wouldn't have believed was going to happen.
We have to act now. There's no time for any delay. And so we could end up with 4 million fewer jobs this year, according to Moody's.
It's not
universal. Wall Street firm, and it could take a year longer
get the tubes out, check
to return to full employment if we don't act now.
Edges.
We could see an entire cohort of kids with a lower lifetime earnings
in steel because I still believe it's one of the best materials to use.
Millions of parents,
used in bikes
and maybe some of you,
1800s.
millions of parents,
and they're still using it now for a very good reason.
Moms are forced to stay home, reducing the family wages, and if they're a single wage earner, it's really difficult. And future job prospects, they have no choice to stay home and take care of their children. Millions of people are out of work, unemployed.
But what we're trying to do is take the best from bicycle building in the past and add a little bit more flair to it.
So the choice couldn't be clearer. We have learned from past crises the risk is not doing too much.
Bicycles.
The risk is not doing enough.
We connect the pipe together. We use a bronze rod and a flame. We heat the tubes up to the same temperature and we fill the joint with bronze.
Among ourselves,
it gives a very, very
but I think she has a statement
quite sculptural feel.
Thank you very much, Mr. President.
You've got to practice. You've got
there is a huge
be able to
amount
judge
of pain
material
in our economy
temperatures.
right
You've got to just
now,
look at it
and it was evident in the data released yesterday.
It's a stage where your tubes start to look a bit like a bicycle.
Applied for unemployment insurance last week, and that's far more than in the worst week of the Great Recession.
Which are lovely, but for me, they don't really have any function. What I love about bicycles, you can start on a Monday with a box of tubes.
Many more people will use their small businesses,
and it can last
the roofs over their heads, and the ability to feed their families. And we need
outside of
help
frame
those people
before
the virus is brought under control. The President's American Rescue Plan will help millions of people make it to the other side of this pandemic, and it will also make some smart investments to get our economy back on track.
Colour is very, very
personal. I want to emphasize the
With any of our
President is
bikes, you can
absolutely
paint
right.
whatever colour you
The
want.
price of doing nothing is much higher than the price of doing something and doing something big. We need to act now, and the benefits of acting now and acting big will far outweigh the costs in the long run.
And then we assemble it. We get out all the new components, and it's a case of putting them together. Some bikes you can assemble in 3 hours, some will take 3 days.
I'm waiting to hear from my team. I'm waiting to hear from the team on the detail of it. I saw a news report this morning. I haven't had a chance to speak with Dr. Fauci. One point I want to make
So we just want to make sure they get the right thing.
And let's get this straight. It's not only that people will be badly, badly hurt if we don't pass this package in terms of increased rate of death, in terms of poverty, a whole range of things.
A lot of people still get that thrill when they were a kid blasting down their windows with their hair.
Economically. We need to make these investments so the economy can grow. Remainder this year and next year. The investments now will help the economy grow. It will not, in fact, put a drag on the economy as spending this money. We'll do the exact opposite. So thank you all very much.
Thank you. Did you discuss GameStop?
Thank you. That was President Biden along with Vice President Harris. Treasury Secretary Yellen talking about the merits of the fiscal stimulus plan that came from the White House. And I think President Biden was very clear here in terms of the message he wanted to get across, Vonnie, was the time is now. They can't wait. Secretary Yellen, detailing the economic pain that is in the economy right now by U.S. consumers, talking about unemployment insurance, and just suggesting very strongly that the fiscal stimulus plan that the Biden administration has proposed needs to get moving through Congress, and President Biden suggesting, time is of the essence. Right now, let's get a check on the markets. We can do that with Greg Jarrett. Let's get a Bloomberg Business Flash. Greg.
We not only had Janet Yellen there, Paul, but we also had people yelling about GameStop. What's going on? Have you been talking about that? There was no response. If there was one, you would have heard it right here. The S&P is headed to its biggest weekly decline in 3 months as day traders' bids for heavily shorted stocks fueled speculation. Hedge funds would need to reduce their market exposure. Small cap stocks outperformed 10-year Treasury yields. Touched 1.1%, and oil extended this weekly gain after Johnson & Johnson said its one-shot vaccine generated strong protection against COVID-19. Let's look where we stand now. The S&P is down 1.3%, down 50. The Dow's down 1.3%, down 404, and the NASDAQ is down 1.2%, down 163. The 10-year is down 8/32. The yield 1.07%. West Texas Intermediate crude little changed at 52.34 a barrel. COMEX gold is up over 1% at 18.60.30 an ounce. The dollar yen 104.66. The euro $1.21.44, and the British pound $1.37.29. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett.
You're listening to Bloomberg Markets with Vonnie Quinn and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Well, it is our great pleasure right now to introduce the Honorable David Burt, who is Premier of Bermuda, possibly the best job in the whole universe. Premier Burt, thank you so much for joining, and hope everybody is safe and well in Bermuda. I know that Bermuda was one of the places that managed to really control and restrain this horrible coronavirus, and for a very, very long time numbers were tiny. Can you give us an update on that, and how many people actually moved to Bermuda to work from home?
Well, thank you. I mean, I know that we had, and it's a pleasure to be here with you and your listening audience. I know that we had over 500 applications of persons who wanted to come to the country. I think we had about 350 who actually arrived on island thus far. Certainly there's people who are in and out. And in Bermuda right now, I think as our latest report last night, we had 27 active cases of the coronavirus, 3 persons in hospital. There was a little bit of an outbreak, but as much as
if you ever saw a wooden surfboard, it was probably hanging in somebody's house or underneath the deck.
I think we reported
but kind of in the last 10 or 15 years, wood has made a big
so I think we are in a good place. We are Bermuda is the 4th most tested country on the planet.
It feels great to be on
testing here. We test and test again.
So, Premier, I am a huge fan of Bermuda. Been there several times, and I greatly look
always had a love
to
for
coming
wood
back.
Kind of passionate.
Give us a sense of
the water.
How the pandemic on a global scale has impacted tourism for Bermuda. How have you responded?
The way they're built, the stories that come with them.
Paul,
a lot of that has translated over to why we build
impact on
surfboards.
tourism. And recently, of course, with the flare-ups
when we first started thinking about building surfboards, wood was the natural material we chose. They have a very high strength-to-weight ratio.
Difficult period, no question about
surfboards
it. But this is
the
our
longest history
low
of
season
use
in tourism,
in the surf
so we're just
world than
taking
any
the time to
material.
recalibrate. But
People
we
have
have
been
events that
surfing
are
wood and
scheduled.
surfboards since
We have
kind
an
of the
international
first
sail regatta
documented
that's going to
history
be
of
taking
people
place in
riding
Bermuda in
waves.
March, Sail GP, and we are
Board starts
we have
in
offsites
CAD,
which are
where we
happening
take a 3D
from
model,
companies
break down the
in the
shape,
United
kind of
States who want
create
to
frames,
still travel and
all the
have
inner
their
parts of
persons
the
in a
board
safe
get
environment
cut.
and have those things offsite. So our tourism industry is focusing more on the niche markets, the long-term tourists, the people who are working from Bermuda. So in that case and instance, that's how we are managing to recover. And I think that following that, there's going to be
we go out to our lumber shed, pick a bunch of cedar, put it into a mill shop, put
the
glue on the
no-sail
edges, clamp it all
There's some
together.
cruise lines that are looking to possibly launch their cruises from here in Bermuda,
the colors,
which is
texture of the
very
wood.
close to the United States, of course, out of the New York market. People can cruise from here.
Yeah, we just got word literally in the last 6 minutes
frame,
that Canada is
right
stopping airline service to some destinations, including the Caribbean and Mexico. So obviously there will be stop and starts.
Once that foundation
with
is
countries,
started, you're basically building up the three-dimensional shape, the outside part of the board, using
so there'll be a
lots of
lot to
strips that
catch
kind
up
of interlock
on. In terms of
together.
growth and GDP and so on, how concerned are you that Bermuda will suffer? And is there any way of stimulating or relieving the economy in the sense of pandemic relief like we're looking at in the United States?
You learn to read the kind of what the grain lines
Well,
are
we've
doing,
implemented a very aggressive program of
you.
stimulus. So when the pandemic first started, we provided generous stimulus to persons, to businesses, to make sure that they can continue to
it's a little bit like putting a lid on the box.
that we
It's
gave
like this is
direct
it.
money
Whatever's inside that board is
persons.
staying inside that board.
Our funding was at
By tensioning
$500
some
per
rope,
week. We made sure that we
together.
continued
Like a
that for
time
persons
capsule.
who needed those fundings. But in the issues of stimulus from Bermuda, what we're doing is we're making
What makes
sure
our
that we
boards
take this
unique are
opportunity
they
to
are built right here in
establish
York.
leadership in
They're
many
built
things.
using
And
material
so
that
we are
grows right here
continuing
in the
to
state of
build on
Maine.
our
They're
digital
built
asset
100%
industry
by
here in Bermuda,
hand by
which is
local
seeing
craftspeople and
growth, which is
surfers.
working. We're continuing to attract
There's
big
a
names
lot
to
of
our
time that
shores.
goes into these
And
boards,
as we
between
see what's
40 and
happening now
60
with the
hours
markets
stuck
and
together.
the
We wanted to
attention
build
that is being
surfboards
paid to
that were
decentralized
as hollow as
finance,
they could
Bermuda,
be,
we are
but
very
still be
fortunate
strong
that we
enough
have
to
been
work well.
preparing ourselves
Too light and they don't surf well, but
regulation
too heavy and they
for a
don't
number
surf
of
well.
years.
So
And now
there's a
it's coming
balance
to the
point
force, so
there,
we are
and
very
that's where we
excited
try
of what
to
the
be.
future may hold.
So, Premier, when I think of the economics of Bermuda, I think of the insurance industry. Long had a strong presence on the island of Bermuda. But I know you've been also developing crypto and blockchain technology, trying to attract fintech to the island. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Well, fintech has been going well. We're building off of our insurance base. Insurance is going well, and the combination of insurance
something about
and fintech,
taking a nice sharp edge tool to a beautiful piece of wood and feeling the curls coming off,
including
knowing that every pass that you're making
been using our regulatory framework
to what you have in
launch
mind.
tokenized stocks, and so people can trade stocks 24/7. We have other big names like Circle and IG International getting licensed. We have people in our sandbox. Companies like Stable House and Cross Towers and market makers, and we also have insurance market innovators such as Niams, and we have other insurers that are coming to offer insurance for digital assets as well. So we are well positioned, I think, to take advantage of the attention that is now being paid to becoming decentralized finance.
The leash plug and a vent.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. Why did you decide to do that? Are there risks in a country sort of embracing one industry so much?
To kind of breathe both ways.
Well, I wouldn't say it's one industry. Bermuda is a well-regulated financial services jurisdiction, and so we are well known for our high regulatory standards. Bermuda is one of the there's only two countries in the world that have regulatory equivalence when it comes to insurance, with both the United States and the European Union, and that's Bermuda and Switzerland. So we're not a fly-by-night jurisdiction. We have very high standards. So the risks are managed appropriately, but at the same point in time, when you look at the way that finance is changing, we recognize that there is an opportunity, and we want to be a place where companies can innovate in a well-regulated space with a respected global regulator, so we can bring innovations to the markets. And we have companies right now under our regulatory regime that are able to offer, the trading of tokenized stocks 24/7 happening today. So we are certainly pushing, I wouldn't say pushing the boundaries, but we are allowing companies to come here and to go ahead and offer innovation to the world.
Talk to us about the insurance business. How has it evolved on the island? Again, I've always thought of it, it's such a big presence for your economy. It's been such a good business and a good environment. Talk to us about this state of the insurance business on Bermuda these days.
100% feel the amount of work.
The insurance business is growing. Certainly, there's been a lot of new capital that has come into insurance due to certainly the pandemic and the losses of which some insurance companies have seen. We've seen an incredible flow of capital in Bermuda. We've seen new companies that have set up to take advantage of this new capital that is flowing into the market, and we're also seeing innovation, which is happening through distributed ledger technologies and other things to make insurance even more efficient than it has been through the innovations that the Bermuda market has brought to the global insurance industry. So it's certainly growing, and we continue to see that growth with companies setting up here and looking how to ensure not only the risk of today, but the risk of tomorrow in the new markets which are emerging.
So how do you attract companies and outfits? What is your pitch in terms of, taxation or, things that might be attractive, other than the obvious? I mean, who wouldn't want to work in Bermuda, right?
Absolutely. It's very strange. Our calling card is actually our regulation. That is our calling card. Our calling card is to be able to work with a regulator that you can have conversations with and speak to. Our regulator is very nice, but however, there is the opportunity to innovate here in Bermuda, and that's what it is. People always will point to the tax argument, but for a large number of our insurers here in Bermuda, they elect to be U.S. taxpayers. They prefer to access the regulatory clarity and the regulatory certainty that they have here in Bermuda, dealing with one regulator versus multiple different regulators at the federal level, the state level, and other places.
In terms of tourism, what percentage of your economy is tourism here?
Tourism and from a foreign exchange earning basis only represents 5% of the country's foreign exchange earnings. Most of our foreign exchange earnings come through international business.
Oh, that's interesting. So, so, what are you expecting?
However,
for higher
tourism has a larger size. Tourism has a larger size for employment on the island. But when we're talking about foreign currency exchange, a lot of that comes from international business. Bermuda's high season, typically in tourism, is the summer months. So we call it from April to October.
And just real quick, Premier, are there commercial flights coming in, or most of the people coming into the island on special chartered or private airplanes?
There are commercial flights coming in every day from New York City. We have flights coming in from Europe as well. The fact is that Bermuda, now that the Biden administration has implemented testing regimes, but Bermuda has had those in place since we reopened our airlines, where we require people to have pre-tests. We test people on arrival. We test people 4 days after arrival, 8 days after arrival, 14 days after arrival. We test people on the way out. So we have, as I said, the most tested country in the world, and that's the reason why we have been able to maintain our connections to the world, and maintain our niche tourism, which is taking place, been able to host events from our shores because we have confidence in our testing.
Premier, I can promise you, you're going to see a pale kid wandering around the streets of Bermuda next week, and Paul, I'll see you in 2 weeks.
That's right. Okay, the Honorable David Burt, thank you so much for joining us. Premier Burt is the Premier of the Government of Bermuda, located obviously in Hamilton, Bermuda. Very interesting story about what's going on the island of Bermuda. It's not just tourism. It is insurance. It is diversified financial services. It is fintech, cryptocurrency. So interesting developments there on the island of Bermuda. And again, I am a huge fan. I look forward to going back. This is Bloomberg.
Daddy, do you want to play?
Play 3 up front today. I can see you scoring a truck now.
Daddy, let's play a game.
Game should be in the bag. Think I'll stick a lump on it.
Dad,
Please let this one come in.
hello?
Sorry, sweetheart. I was miles away. What were you saying?
When you're there, but not there. The National Gambling Treatment Service is here to help. Search Be Gamble Aware for free confidential advice. Start to regain control after one call or chat.
Could you look a COVID-19 patient in the eyes and tell them the risk isn't real? Could you tell an intensive care nurse on a 12-hour shift that you never bend the rules? Could you say, in all honesty, that you only ever leave home when you absolutely have to? Around 1 in 3 people who have COVID-19 have no symptoms and are spreading it without knowing. Are you absolutely positive you're not one of them? Stay home. Protect the NHS. Save lives.
Catch the Premier League on Now TV in a year where the title race is wide open.
It's just blistering, it really is.
Tomorrow, Arsenal host high-flying rivals Man United before Southampton take on Aston Villa.
Oh, it's a beauty!
And you can watch both games live for a one-off price of $9.99. With the Now TV Sky Sports Pass, you only pay for the games that matter to you. Search Now TV Sports. 18 plus, content streamed via internet, full terms apply.
We all have our own personal relationship with money, how we spend, save and budget, our goals and dreams for the future. This is your money voice, and it's as unique as you are. And the Barclays app can help you master it. It helps you see how you're spending and any upcoming scheduled payments, so you can make a clear plan for your money. Master your moneyverse and make money work for you. Barclays. You need to be 16 or over to use the app. T's and C's apply.
Have you heard the most unscripted, unfiltered, and unhinged sports show in the game? On the Skip and Shannon Undisputed podcast, Skip Bayless, Shannon Sharp, and Jenny Taft discuss the biggest stories in the world of sports.
Father Time is at least sort of looking over one shoulder right now. LeBron, you remember me?
The one thing, even Skip, because, okay, they cut some games last year. That was 10, 12 games that he averaged 25. That's another 250, 275
Search
points.
Skip and Shannon on TuneIn to listen.
From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is Bloomberg Radio.
Couple who have come out live streaming on Bloomberg.
It is a Friday on radio and television, Balance of Power. We welcome all of you, our world headquarters in New York. Good morning, ensconced in Washington. Emily Wilkins joins me today, obviously in for David Weston, and we say good morning to all of you. No, we're not going to do GameStop in Washington for the next 60 minutes. Emily had a tantrum and said, no, we're not doing GameStop 100% of the time because there's so much more going on to set up for the weekend and get to the Sunday talk shows. Emily, what is the number one topic they don't want to talk about on the talk shows this weekend?
I mean, to be honest, I feel like all of Washington is just scrambling to figure out the Wall Street terms that have come up this week. I just learned what short selling is. So there's that. But I mean, a lot of people, there's also the stimulus. There's a huge question on this. There's a lot of tension around it right now. I mean, there's a sincere bipartisan willingness to get something done, but seemingly no way forward on it.
I love that. I saw CNN trying to figure out the gamma vortex, and I said, it's not working. They got to get up to speed there. Let's do the data right now. It's important. Alex Steele talking about the deterioration in the market that we've seen. The Dow, negative 400, SPX, negative 48. The VIX comes in. This is really, really, really important. The VIX 31.87 has come in a little bit on the 2-year yield. That's not where it is. The 10-year yield was a 109, a little better yield. It's a churn on Friday, and I'm not going to mince words, folks. It's a nervous churn, waiting to see which way those different GameStop-like stocks break. Will they go down? Will they go up into the close as they settle out on a Friday? Emily, there's just so much going on, and I really want to touch here on the politics and get away from GameStop as well. We've got a great lineup with Mr. Trumpka coming up later in the hour. How's Marty Walsh doing at labor?
Lots of Biden administrators, I mean, they're all kind of getting started right now, right? Yeah. Dealing with a lot of executive orders from the White House, and there's still a number of them that aren't even confirmed. I mean, the Senate's taken much, much longer to confirm Biden nominees than they have other nominees for various presidents.
Now, it's been a process, and of course, distracted by all on Capitol Hill from January 6th. Here's what we're going to do right now. We're going to talk to Sarah Bianchi, Evercore ISI, head of U.S. Public Policy. We're thrilled that she could join us today, and I'm particularly thrilled with your affinity to the president at the University of Delaware, how you worked with President Biden under the policy prescription of the Delaware. I want you to parse with your knowledge of Joe Biden, the Biden administration difference now from the first weeks of the first Obama administration.
Wow. Well, both administrations took place under very difficult circumstances. As you know, of course, the Obama administration had the free-falling financial crisis and economy, and the Biden administration is starting with this COVID challenge and the vaccines. I think the real difference that you're seeing is Biden wants to learn from the missteps here and get going fast. That's why you've seen all of these executive orders come out so quickly, and it's also why you're seeing the president really saying, let's go, Congress. We need COVID relief now. And so I think Fast and Furious absolutely wants to work with Republicans and do this in a bipartisan manner. But I think what he's signaling is if we don't get that done, I'm not going to wait.
Emily?
I also want to talk a little bit. I mean, you see that Biden is signing all of these executive orders at this point. And I know that he's got some criticism for that, just at the pace that he's moving forward, concerns about him not working up with Congress. I mean, how valid do you think that criticism is? What is the Biden administration doing by signing so many executive orders in such a short time?
Well, certainly the administration has challenges here in trying to project this commitment to unity, which is very heartfelt from the president, in addition to having a lot of work to get done fast. And some of that will be more divisive. I think what the president is saying is there's a lot of damage to undo here. We don't have a lot of time on climate change. We don't have a lot of time to undo some of these changes. So if I'm getting going a little bit fast, that's because we have so much work to do. He's trying to create momentum And I think you'll continue to see that regardless of the pushback that some are giving him.
On the internet.
And I know that Biden's number one priority now, of course, is the COVID-19. Particularly vaccine distribution is something that he's spoken about a lot. We are currently at the 1 million vaccines per day level that Biden touted when he was a candidate. But I know that he also, at the same point, hasn't made a lot of changes to what we saw the vaccine program under the Trump administration being. I mean, is it that the Trump administration's vaccine program is working pretty well, or should we expect more changes from Biden on that going forward?
I think the president has signaled that he will be getting more changes for sure. I think they are looking to put up some of these, what they call these 100 FEMA sites, where people can get more large-scale vaccinations. They are also looking to do more work directly with pharmacies. So some of what I think the changes, first they are getting their arms around exactly what is going on. And look, states are picking up the pace regardless. So some of it is continuity and we're further along, but I think you're going to see some changes. As I think you all mentioned earlier in the program, we're only a week or so in here, so there is a ways to go for this administration. I do believe you'll see some changes in vaccine distribution, and you'll have to meet the president's goals.
On radio and television, Sarah Bianchi with us, thrilled she's with us with Evercore ISI. Sarah Bianchi, your secret weapon is you get to greet the day every day with Edward Hyman of ISI and his view of the American economy. Dovetail, because we've got Trump coming up from AFL-CIO. Dovetail the granularity of Ed Hyman's research on the economy into the urgency to jumpstart this labor economy in America.
Built on the grounds of
well, what Ed does so brilliantly is to give us a really great macro picture of where we're headed. And we do believe that as the country reopens, there will be a lot of momentum in this economy. But what I think Mr. Trump will probably will tell you, and I believe he's 100% right, is that this economy is not working for everybody. And that is what Joe Biden and Trump need to worry about. They need to make sure that as this comes back online and we all come back online, there's some real scar tissue and some real weak points in this economy for millions of Americans. That may not be something that the stock market is focused on, but it sure is something that President Biden is focused on. That's why you see some early announcements on OSHA and minimum wage and the like. So I think they are both 100% right.
Do you have any optimism, Sarah, that under the Democratic Party prescription, we can go more narrow on stimulus and benefit the people that really need it towards income replacement and income substitution? Or is it just hopeless? In America, we're going to throw money at a larger group of people, including many people, as Michael McKee mentioned this morning, are just saving it, just banking it away.
2 weeks later.
Well, it really depends on which policy you're talking about. Extending unemployment really gets to people who really need it. And parts of our economy are not open. And they really need it. Other things are less easy to target from,
just like everything about it, man.
and do end up getting to some people. We certainly saw that with the PPP program. And certainly there is a fair argument that the checks are not the most targeted way. So I do think in a crisis, it's particularly difficult to really target it. But I think that's why the president will insist on unemployment insurance and some of the state fiscal components really being a component here because they are better targeting those in need. In addition, I do think the rental crisis is going to be something that we'll continue to see as an issue. Again, from a Wall Street perspective, it may not be really dragging on the markets, but for a lot of people, there's a real challenge here. And so these are some of the things that the administration and its allies will be focused on.
Sarah Bianchi, thank you so much for the brief. Evercore ISI, head of U.S. Public Policy. Emily, we got to get out. I just got an email from Al listening in New Jersey, and Al in New Jersey says there's been a dearth of GameStop coverage in the last 10 minutes, so we got to do that right now. Emily, what is your thought on GameStop? How does Washington get to the Sunday talk shows? Do they talk about it, or does it drift away as they have other issues?
I don't see how it doesn't come up on the Sunday shows. I mean, this is something that you've really begun to see lawmakers respond to on both sides of the aisle. You've seen Elizabeth Warren today go ahead and call for the SEC to do an investigation. You hear the White House is interested. You've heard various people, House and Senate are interested. This is something that's going to start up in Washington. This is something that's going to be discussed in the next couple months, and lawmakers are probably, if they're not already, beginning to check with their aides to make sure that they know exactly what a short squeeze is.
Well, we're going to continue this coverage. Emily Wilkins driving GameStop higher. You know, when she's not asking questions than I am, she's going long on GameStop.
I'll get on that
we're
track.
off at 340 level up to 359 right now. Not the peak for the day, but really buttressed right up there. Michael O'Rourke, Chief Market Strategist, Jones Trading, will join us here. Emily Wilkins and Tom Keene in for David Weston. Balance of Power, Bloomberg Radio, and Bloomberg TV.
Rich chicken to his face. Ever-growing global audience, hungry for more releases.
I worry
from
about
emerging
lots of things.
Around
My finances, my grandkids.
I didn't know that it was going to...
If you're 65 or older, you have enough things to worry about. Pneumococcal pneumonia shouldn't be one of them. Even healthy adults, 65 and older, are at increased risk for this potentially serious bacterial lung disease that can disrupt your life for weeks. Help protect yourself with the Prevnar 13 pneumococcal 13 valent conjugate vaccine, diphtheria CRM 197 protein. Prevnar 13 is approved for adults to help prevent infections from 13 strains of the bacteria that cause pneumococcal pneumonia. Prevnar 13 does not protect against all strains of the disease. Don't get Prevnar 13 if you have had a severe allergic reaction to the vaccine or its ingredients. Adults with a weakened immune system may have a lower response to the vaccine. The most commonly reported side effect was pain at the injection site. For additional common side effects and full prescribing information, please call 1-866-694-9300 or visit Prevnar13.com. Ask your doctor or pharmacist about Prevnar 13. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Stocks have extended their slump amid lingering concerns about the problems created by volatile retail trading. Treasury yields and gold are up. The S&P fell more than 1% and headed to its biggest weekly decline in 3 months as day traders' bids for heavily shorted stocks fueled speculation. Hedge funds would need to reduce their market exposure.
That taught me a lot.
Let's check the markets now. The S&P is now down 1.2%, down 45. The Dow's down 1.3%, down 399. And the Nasdaq is down just about 1%, down 129. The 10-year is down 30 seconds with a yield of 1.08%. West Texas Intermediate crude's up 0.3% at 52.49 a barrel. COMEX gold's up 1.1% at 18.61.90 an ounce.
Who were affiliated with
the dollar yen 104.64. The euro dollar 21.43. And the British pound $1.37.30. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now more Bloomberg Balance of Power. Today with Tom Keene, right here
Jody
on
just
Bloomberg
released
Radio.
the In Tongues EP. His first project is a series of
Jody In Tongues record came out a couple
Good afternoon,
weeks ago.
everyone. Balance of Power. David Weston, off. Emily Wilkins joining me. Thrilled that she could join on a day of politics and, of course, dovetailing into that the markets. Right now, your market briefing, your first word news. Here's Mark Crumpton.
Tom, thank you. The European Union has unveiled a drastic plan to restrict the export of COVID-19 vaccines, stepping up its fight over access to millions of doses it says it has been unfairly denied. The move by the European Commission will require drug companies such as Pfizer and AstraZeneca to obtain prior authorization before sending shots manufactured in the bloc to other countries. More charges may be filed in connection with the January 6th riot at the U.S. Capitol after arresting more than 150 people for relatively minor offenses like trespassing and disorderly conduct. Law enforcement officials say they're weighing more serious charges under the rarely used federal sedition statute. That statute criminalizes any attempt by 2 or more people to overthrow the government, take control of its property, or disrupt the execution of U.S. laws. The United States has extended the temporary legal residency status for nearly 7,000 people from Syria. Because of that country's civil war, the Department of Homeland Security says the status that was set to expire at the end of March will be extended for 18 months. It allows foreign citizens to stay in the U.S. if they lack some other form of legal residency and they come from a country from where it would be dangerous to return. Chevron surprised analysts with a fourth quarter loss. Weak fuel demand slammed its refining business, and the company incurred substantial charges from its takeover of London Energy. We spoke with Chevron's CFO.
Market conditions continue to still be challenged in downstream, not operating back at a full economic recovery. So we continue to operate very safely and reliably, and we're serving our customers, but demand is down a little bit. We also have a couple of one-time items in inventory adjustment, which contributed to the loss after the quarter.
On LN.
Meanwhile, Chevron's oil and natural gas production rebounded from the lowest in more than 2 years. Global news 24 hours a day on air on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in over 120 countries. I'm Mark Crumpton. This is Bloomberg.
Mark Crumpton, thank you so much. Emily Wilson, Tom Keenan for David Weston. I said earlier today, a couple hours ago or so,
terrestrial radio.
the idea of speaking to people informed about all of this stuff on GameStop. We talked to Lawrence Tabb of Bloomberg Intelligence, who on Wall Street, and particularly New York Wall Street, is absolutely definitive about the mechanisms that are out there, the sausage making of the Wall Street machine. We do that again on trading. Michael O'Rourke is Chief Market Strategist at Jones Trading. If you don't know the name Jones Trading, you should know their job is to get out of the way and execute large block trades to the benefit of their clients. They go back a gazillion years. They did block trades for George Washington right after the Revolution. Michael O'Rourke joins us this morning. Michael, what has it been like at Jones Trading in the last 48 hours? You guys have seen all this before, as I am, but what's the distinction this time?
I mean, it's been pretty remarkable, Tom. Obviously, a lot of these names start trading at 4 in the morning. So we're basically manned 24/6, I think it is. So we have guys trading at all times for our clients, and it's been, like I said, pretty remarkable. We've been active. It's been busy. We are seeing a lot of institutions trying to manage the situation and be take advantage of opportunities when they're there, but also be a little bit defensive, and because it signals a risky environment.
I don't want to get you in trouble, your general counsel, and ruin your Friday, but I'm going to ask: are you seeing evidence that the sophisticates are going long on these various shorts?
I wouldn't say we are, but I don't see a lot of the I don't see the day-to-day trading action as more of a. I talk to the clients about what's going on in the market, but I don't see the orders basically. So
that's a nice out. I was a rude question, and he gave me the answer. It was a non-answer. Emily, Michael O'Rourke really succeeded at that.
Well, I also wanted to ask Michael a little bit, since this is balance of power and we do try and combine the markets and Washington. Michael, a House and a Senate panel have already said that they are going to begin investigating everything we've seen in the markets in the past week. What, if anything, is Congress's role here?
I think they're right. I know Ms. Elizabeth Warren made comments yesterday just about, and a lot of it has to do with the integrity of the markets. There have been a lot of issues building up for years. I think earlier in this week during the FOMC press conference, Mike McKee nailed it when he asked the Chairman Powell about Reg T margin requirements, if the Fed was considering it. And obviously Chairman Powell said no, and Chairman Powell answered several questions about this, basically saying the stock market wasn't his responsibility when it comes to financial stability. He's worried more about the banking system, and saying that the Fed's responsibility is margin requirements. I would expect he should have to answer in front of Congress as well, because obviously a lot of yesterday's dislocation was different firms imposing margin requirements on their clients to protect themselves and their other clients who are not involved in this speculation. So I think this is something that's building for quite some time. We've lost a lot of the market's pricing mechanism, and I think Congress should step in and really review what's going on here, because this is not a healthy market environment.
So when Congress does get these individuals at these hearings in front of them, what kind of questions do lawmakers need to ask? What do they need to be focused on?
I think a lot of it is the social media aspect of this whole phenomenon is pretty remarkable. When you talk, I've written about in the past, obviously social media is basically changing society now, and whether it's the events that we saw politically in Washington or events we're seeing here, I work for a brokerage industry. In the brokerage industry, we are so highly regulated. Everything they come out and convert their convertible, that had another 44 million shares out there, and you don't see that aspect of it or the real news getting disseminated on social media. So people reacting to or looking at social media for their news, it's bad information.
Michael O'Rourke, very quickly here, we're out of time. I could go on for hours with you with this wonderful trading perspective. Do you just assume that DTCC is going to come back to the well and demand more money?
You know what? I don't know. I actually don't think that's probably the case, because I think everyone else is acting responsibly and everyone's trying to shore their books up. So I think they kind of made their statement, made their move yesterday. And I think once you see that, people tend to step into line, and hopefully we don't have any issues.
Michael O'Rourke, thank you so much with Jones Trading. Greatly appreciated today. Emily from near the Gucci store in Washington emails in and says, Tom, we're not talking enough politics, so I'll fix that here quickly. Michael O'Rourke, just Jones Trading, folks, goes so far back about the way it used to be and how they have modernized to move forward here to create value. You know, Emily, I really wonder here what Washington's going to do when they need to get into the obscurities of the DTCC, the people that are the clearinghouse.
Usually there's a couple lawmakers who know exactly what's going on, and everyone else relies on their staff.
and the lawmakers rely on two of their staff members who are 25 years old, right?
24.
Okay, 24, something like that. We're going to continue this discussion, much more coming up. But of course, we'll look at Johnson & Johnson, the vaccine news today. Stay with us on radio and television, Balance of Power.
Here at Dave, we're over the moon that people have stopped talking about our repeats and started noticing our original comedies. Like at Katrina Chick, who called them surprisingly adequate shows. What an endorsement! And that's not the only one.
Reasonably good telly.
Surprisingly quite entertaining. With brand new hypothetical. Enjoy the show, nerd. Meet the Richardsons.
We've had a lot of positive feedback.
And Mel Gedroych, Unforgivable. It's good, isn't it? It's fair to say there's some surprisingly adequate brand new comedy on Dave.
America's pastime is a big deal. It's also big business. Baseball Biz is the podcast about the business of baseball, covering everything from MLB history and operations to interviews with players, agents, owners, scouts, umpires, and beyond.
We have the regular baseball season. We get all involved with everything with, the World Series. Thank goodness. It's the most exciting thing you have. But then you say, what happens after that? Well, you
search Baseball Biz in one word on TuneIn to listen. We know you're working from home these days. Why not make those days a little bit better with TuneIn Premium? It's the simple things in life. Premium gives you exclusive commercial-free news and music channels like CNN and Today's Hits, and fewer ads on over 100,000 more radio stations. Try it today for free. The news that makes history.
Outrage. That is the reaction from some lawmakers right now after this week that the money
just the past 24 hours, the situation in Syria has
3 key points make up the Metro Manila Council.
The games that make legends. The music and podcasts that make your day better.
Hello, everybody. It's Bill Burr. It's time for another episode of the Thursday afternoon, just before Friday, Monday morning podcast. And I am just checking in on you, seeing how your week's going.
Live in the moment with TuneIn. Stay informed with live news from CNN, MSNBC, and more. Follow your team and soundtrack your life with music, podcasts, and over 100,000 live radio stations. News, sports, music, podcasts. Hear it all on TuneIn.
They kind of go, should I look? I don't know what the right protocol is. When there's a tiny robot with its bright little eyes going around, just going happy everywhere. It really
Friday Balance of Power on radio and television. Thank you for being with us. Emily Wilkins, Drag Me Along, Tom Keene in New York, Emily in Washington, in for David Weston. I need to do a market check as the Dow rolls over to new lows, negative 544 in the Dow, just above the 30,000 level, negative 68 points, SPX. The VIX back out 4 big figures, 34.05. That really does show the tension in the market. The yield 1.07. We'll leave it at that. Time is precious. Jody Schneider has who's been on the watch across the Pacific Rim for Bloomberg News for a good number of years. We are thrilled to welcome her back to New York, and she studies today Johnson & Johnson. Jody, did this go well for the acclaimed Johnson & Johnson?
On my own, in my room,
well, thanks,
for long
thanks for a
periods
nice
of time.
welcome. And it is a good report. These are good results. Strong protection against COVID-19 in large, late-stage trials. The number, though, that is getting some attention is that 66%
a lot of the time,
number, presenting 66% of moderate to severe cases of COVID-19. Even though the 85% number is preventing severe infections and 100% of hospitalizations and deaths.
Going to be able to
probably more people should be looking at, but the shares did decline some in late
is being able to count the number of people you see a day on one hand.
Number.
So, Jody, I know that they're planning to go to the FDA next week for an emergency authorization. If this gets approved and it gets on the market, does that mean that people who are still waiting to get their COVID-19 vaccine might get it a little bit sooner?
It's really a hope that this will bring the law
the sky somewhere else, or the trees, or a sign that is incredible, or being able to
get them have that requires 2 doses, and then
Jody Schneider, thank you so much. Too short a visit. We'll do this again. Jody Schneider of Bloomberg News, looking at the equity markets, the business markets as well. The markets deteriorate. Negative 569 on the Dow. We've got 70 points. Standard & Poor's 500 like a rock. GameStop not deteriorating, holding nicely at the 345 level within the true swirl that we've seen all week in this short squeeze. Coming up from the 6th Congressional District, Pennsylvania, Chrissy Houlihan. Captain Houlihan, next.
Things where I want to not have to use them because I want to do well enough to realize myself. Like, it really makes a big difference to me to be able to.
Gotta catch a flight? Long road trip ahead? Wi-Fi connection spotty? Make sure you're never without something to listen to by offlining your podcasts on TuneIn. Just find your favorite podcast and tap the 3 dots to download the episode you want to hear. When you're off the grid, you'll find all your offline audio under your favorites. Ever wonder what Tony Kornheiser is thinking about today? Wonder no more with the Tony Kornheiser Show, a daily podcast that starts with sports and quickly moves into politics, current events, entertainment, and whatever happens to be on Tony's mind.
No, I'd buy them.
I got to
Mother bought them. Whoppers are so great. I like
individually, but not in a.
There's only 3. They only come 3. The portion is.
Search the Tony Kornheiser Show on TuneIn to listen.
How do you keep up on the latest NBA news, analysis, and rumors?
Again, Kawhi Leonard, 5th straight game in the series. He's at 30 or more.
On his podcast, The Low Post, ESPN's Zach Lowe brings in the sharpest minds in basketball to break down all the stories that matter.
It's so obvious that people talk around it, but forget it sometimes. And that's that this is a very strange season. So we have teams that have had a 9-month layoff and teams that have had a 2-month layoff. We have guys
Search The Low Post on TuneIn to listen.
Take TuneIn with you wherever you go with TuneIn On Demand.
Jumping on a flight or planning a long road trip?
Download episodes of your favorite podcast and enjoy hours of great audio content no matter where you are.
When you're ready to escape, head to your favorites, hit play, and listen.
With or without a Wi-Fi connection.
Featuring top podcasts in every genre.
When we played beer pong together back in the day?
Oh, here we go.
I met him first, by the way. Yes.
Save your data with TuneIn On Demand. Download your favorites today.
Need your daily fix of hockey talk? On the Locked On NHL podcast, join a rotating cast of league insiders for daily shows analyzing all the latest news, rumors, and predictions around the National Hockey League.
The Chicago Blackhawks are on the clock, and they haven't submitted a pick because, much like real-life fantasy drafts, everybody takes the full allotment of time.
Yeah.
In almost 2 hours, and we're only halfway through the draft.
Especially the number 1 pick. Why does the number 1 pick? Search Locked On NHL on TuneIn to listen.
morning, everyone, or good afternoon. I'm used to a good morning here on Bloomberg Surveillance. Balance of Power on radio and television. We welcome all of you on this Friday. Emily Wilkins and Tom Keenan for David Weston. Thrilled that you will join us here on a Friday briefing as we look to the weekend and into February as well. With our first word news in New York, Mark Crumpton.
Good day, Tom. Johnson & Johnson's one-shot vaccine has generated strong protection against COVID-19 in a large, late-stage trial. The company says in a study of more than 43,000 people, the vaccine prevented 66% of moderate to severe cases of COVID-19, and it was particularly effective at stopping severe disease. The nation's top infectious disease expert, Dr. Anthony Fauci, weighed in on that news.
When one looks at the potential impact on a very important aspect of what we look at carefully is namely severe disease, that overall in the United States, in South Africa, and in Brazil, the overall efficacy for severe disease was 85%. We have now a value-added additional vaccine candidate.
Johnson & Johnson plans to file with the Food and Drug Administration for an emergency use authorization next week. With more than 80% of its population vaccinated, Israel leads the fight against COVID-19. But the emergence of more infectious variants is overwhelming its hospitals, showing the long road ahead for the rest of the world. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has pledged to make Israel a test case for how quickly COVID shots can help reopen economies. He's aiming to have all Israelis older than 16 vaccinated by the end of March. U.S. Capitol Police are stepping up security at Washington area transportation hubs in the wake of the deadly assault on the Capitol. In an email obtained by the Associated Press, the House's chief law enforcement officer says police will be stationed at area airports and Washington's Union Station on busy travel days. Lawmakers are also being urged to notify law enforcement of their travel plans and report any suspicious activity. Russian President Vladimir Putin has signed a bill extending the last remaining nuclear arms control treaty between Russia and the United States, a week before the pact was due to expire. President Biden has discussed the New START treaty with President Putin earlier this week. The pact limits the number of nuclear warheads, missiles, and bombers each country can have. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in over 120 countries. I'm Mark Crumpton. This is Bloomberg. Tom?
Mark, thank you so much. Emily Wilkins and Tom King, good afternoon on Bloomberg Radio and Bloomberg Television. This is a joy. This is what I love that Balance of Power does. Thank you, Matt Shirley, to move the 305 miles from Philadelphia out to Pittsburgh. That's what we're going to do here in the next number of minutes. We start to the east with the Eagles, who are not as good as the Steelers this year. Christy Houlihan knows science and innovation better than most people in Congress. Out of Stanford, a distinguished career in the Air Force, she is pushing innovation and a return to science. The gentlelady from the 6th Congressional District joins us outside Philadelphia today. Congresswoman, thank you so much for joining Balance of Power. I want to get right to it about science. You define science in Congress. How quickly can you turn around the anti-science that we saw of the last 4 years?
Network of driverless cars will need the speed
Thank you for having me, and I think that that's a really critical and important question, and I'm grateful to see this administration has moved out rapidly on that exact conversation. And you've seen as recently as the last piece that you led in with a new announcement from Johnson & Johnson that was met with open arms and excitement by this administration. I had the opportunity to debrief yesterday. The Congress was by Dr. Fauci amongst others, and had a little bit of a sneak preview into that. And I'm really excited that we're having these conversations about issues of innovation, issues of science, and issues of technology, because those are the things that will lead us into the future and lead us out of this COVID pandemic that we're experiencing right now.
So when will we
Congresswoman Houlihan, you know that Washington has let small business down. We see it up here in Manhattan. Emily Wilkins sees it in Washington. Our audience sees it and listens to it nationwide at every moment. What is a prescription to actually jumpstart small business, get them through this crisis, and then move on from there?
So you're right. We have let the small business community down. 100,000 businesses in May alone were shuttered for good in our country and never probably to open again. And so it is our responsibility to elevate the importance of the small business community because 99.7% of all businesses are small businesses in our country. It's one of the reasons why I chose to be on the Small Business Committee in Congress, which is historically one that people don't stay on long term, but I've asked to be on it in my second term because I'm an entrepreneur and an innovator and an engineer myself, and I believe the power of us responding to this pandemic comes in the form of small businesses, and the power of our office is responsible to making sure we're delivering for them. It's why I introduced my very first bill of the 117th Congress this week, which is called the Ramp for Innovators Act. It's exactly what it sounds like. It's an on-ramp for innovators to be able to have better access, quicker access to funding, the seed capital that comes from the SBIR and the STTR.
Congressman, I also wanted to ask a little bit, right now, small businesses are suffering, startups are suffering. Does anything need to be done specifically in any upcoming stimulus bill to make sure that these two groups are being taken care of? What do they need in the short term?
So in the short term, you've seen some beginnings of responses in the form of the Paycheck Protection Program. You've seen it in EIDL, the Emergency Disaster Loan Program. You've seen us in subsequent efforts and tranches in our COVID response, working down, making sure that we're getting to those phase zero businesses, those 0 and 1 employee businesses, those startup businesses, those women and minority and veteran-owned businesses to make sure that we're finding everybody where they are and we're elevating them during this pandemic. But it also is looking towards the future and making sure that we're providing better on-ramps for people so that when we're coming out of this pandemic, we're creating millions of companies, not just millions of jobs that allow us to be able to scale rapidly and create jobs for the future economy.
You used the term on-ramps. Can you dive into that a little bit more? I mean, what is exactly preventing someone who wants to start a small business or start a startup from doing so at this point? Like, what additional things are needed besides someone just having the will to do so?
Of course, I mentioned that I come out of the entrepreneurial world, and my job primarily has been as an operator. I'm the person who comes in when the idea has been had and helps to commercialize it and execute on it. And those are some of the things that are most difficult to do. Many people have very good ideas, but if they don't have access to capital when they need it, and if they don't have help in commercializing and optimizing their idea, they probably won't succeed. And that's exactly what this program is trying to do. This on-ramp for people to be able to use the capital, but also the expertise to be able to commercialize and to be able to have patent control that is necessary for us to be able to be competitive.
Good morning and good afternoon. Balance of power on radio and television markets deteriorating negative 600 right now in the Dow, just below 30,000. We'll have much for GameStop and that crew pretty much stable here right now. Captain Houlihan, I've got to ask a question, and you are qualified. Politicians love to walk the walk, talk the talk. You did it. You were in the Air Force.
Silicon Valley is all about building the future.
How's the Pentagon doing?
Called Meta,
and how does the Pentagon adapt and adjust to this new administration?
On augmented reality.
It's a great question. My job when I was up at Hanscom Air Force Base is very relevant to this conversation. It was about trying to figure out what the future programs that we needed to create to address future threats were. And we need as a military to be much more innovative, to be much more quick and agile than we have been historically.